Excellent. Excellent. It's all coming together then. That's what I wanted to hear.
So I heard the first argument I've heard in a while that really just sort of stuck with my brain. I wanted to pick at the philosophers in the room.
Oh, okay. What's up?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So apparently David Hume has a thought experiment, right? Where if you and I, hypothetically, right, if you and I live on neighboring farms and there's a field in between us, right,
Okay.
that needs plowed.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say, you and I make an agreement. We'll plow this field together tomorrow afternoon. We'll be here and we'll do that and blah, blah, blah. If one of us doesn't do the work, it's very abundantly clear, right? Because there's just the two of us and, you come over and knock on my door or whatever.
Sure.
Whenever you get 1,000 people, it becomes much harder to view your work as crucial to any individual portion of it, right? Because it's become more complex then.
The operation has become more complex.
Right. Regardless of whether or not the actual task is the same, it's not, right? In the sense that, you know, there's now 1,000 people. So if one person doesn't show up to work, is someone going to notice?
Sure.
And as you multiply that across more and more complicated things beyond, just plowing a field, how do you best manage to make sure that people understand that their contributions are in fact relevant? Because it becomes very easy then as individuals to just say, well, my acts don't matter. We literally see it all the time, right? With like, I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't matter.
Right. Well,
Now, the counterpoint, right, that's most obvious is what's stopping that from happening in a capitalist society,
okay.
right?
Let me.
Nothing is fundamentally except I would say that in a capitalist society, they don't really care. If one person doesn't show up to work, they just don't get paid, right? That's the ideal, of course.
Sure. Okay. So, give me that one again. Give me that last part again. I'm sorry. I.
If one person doesn't show up to work in the concept of a capitalist ideal,
Uh huh.
right, they just don't get paid for doing that labor.
Right. Which doesn't change the fact the labor went unperformed, and that the labor may or may not still be meaningless, and that So you
Or
just put the.
meaningful or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
No,
just
that's
doesn't give a shit whether or not it's relevant. My suspicion would be that in a communist society, right,
mhm.
you're trying to direct people at work that is in fact meaningful.
That's kind of more like the anarchist thing that all work has to be meaningful. So, okay. So here,
And
all right.
while you
Yeah.
ponder your response to this, I'm going to go fill up the dog's water dish because she needs some.
Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll be right back.
All right. So I am left to ponder then Hume's problem. At scale, things can become more meaningless. So let's ponder away at meaning at scale, right? In the myriad of human beings. Let's start pondering that. So, all work inherently being meaningful or desired is something you want to do is a bit of a paradox because everybody can't operate like that all of the time. So then we have the problem of who gets to do the meaningful
My
work.
headphones.
No!
They're all falling apart now. Yes, you good girl. There you go. All right.
There's
All
that
right. I'm
puppy.
back.
There's that sweet puppy.
Yeah, she's a good girl.
I said puppy, right? I meant to say puppy.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, good. That could have. You add some S's to that, and I said something I didn't want to say.
All them poppies.
Yeah, poppies. That's the way to go. That isn't perverted. Got my ass. Ooh, you got my ass. Doom, da, doom, doo. All right, so let's start kind of wading through this and see where we come out the other side of.
Sure.
All right, so in the capitalist system, obviously the onus is on the individual. It's not really relevant whether or not you think the work is meaningful or not. That was the work task assigned, right? So
Right.
they,
Or it's profitable.
yeah, it's
Regardless of whether or not you think it's
preci-
meaningful, it's
pre-
profitable.
precisely because it's profitable. It doesn't mean shit whether or not you think it's meaningful.
Right.
Precisely because if I think it's profitable, that's good enough. Oh, I just
Or
felt,
because you think it's profitable.
yeah,
Or because I think, you know what I mean? Like, it can be anyone who thinks it's profitable. That's
yeah.
not the point.
As long as the capitalist thinks it's profitable, ultimately the person who's going to try to make the money off of it thinks it's profitable. That's good enough a reason as any to do the work, and the fact that you didn't, then that falls on you. You're the one who's supposed to be punished for it. And
In
by
theory.
proxy, your coworkers are punished for it because they got to pick up the slack because I still think it's profitable if I'm the capitalist. Right? That's honestly what it is. That answer is engendered to breed resentment. Right? That's what that breeds. Because of course now I'm mad at you. Never mind the fact that instead of just going, oh well, we just don't have to do that part of the work. Specifically, no, your work gets exponentially harder for each person who does not participate. Right?
I guess you're putting a very specific spin on this, which is more of like a social question, right? How do we encourage people to do work that we
Well,
think is important, regardless of whether or not they think it's important?
remember, I got to start thinking this through, right? Because I got to see if
That's
I
the
even
an-
I got
that's
to
the angle more that I'm curious about.
well, I got to see if I even accept that premise.
Sure.
I got to, the thing
You
is,
don't have to encourage people to do work that they don't want to do.
well, yeah, it implies pretty dramatically an element of coercion, right? If I try to make you do something you don't want to do, and I don't incentivize doing it anyway, right? That's the key. That's the key to capitalism, right? I have to incentivize you to do it anyway, even if you normally wouldn't want to do it. Otherwise, what I'm doing is coercive labor, which in theory, even in capitalism, is still wrong, right?
Right.
Now we've seen plenty of opportunities for capitalists to be like, yeah, I know it's wrong, I don't care.
We're
Or
working on ideals for both scenarios.
you're right, or just simply justifying the bad behavior anyways, going, no, it's fine, it's cool though. But for real, it's cool, right? Those are all possible. Those are also possibilities under capitalism. Okay, so there again, the work itself. So let's take the premise: is it meaningful or not? Right? Let's take that question first.
Mhm.
In context, you not doing your share of the work precisely because somebody else is going to be stuck doing it, right? You may not think it's meaningful as the subjective individual. The counterpoint though is somebody sure as hell thinks it is because with you not doing it, they're stuck doing it, right?
Yes.
So it has meaning in that regard. Even if it's just to one individual who is now stuck doing the job you're not doing for the time you're not doing it.
Mhm.
Okay, so there is that to ponder. We're
And David Hume probably puts it better being a professional philosopher,
well,
and me using a variant of the argument that I'm sure he put forward that I heard from two philosophers removed doesn't help, I'm sure either.
Will.
um,
What up?
yo,
Me.
it. You know what though? Here's the baller part. I'm not commenting on your regurgitation just like when I regurgitate them. I'm not commenting on that because it sounds fine.
Hmm.
So I suppose my next question here is what is being construed as meaningful work, right?
Are we live?
Yeah, we are live.
We're always alive.
Yeah, we're live as a kite, son. Don't
Fair
touch
enough.
me, I'm a real live wire. Oh, psycho killer. Kiss kiss K. Suck 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 dick in. All right. Anyway, moving on. Um, moving on. So I'm gonna I'm gonna contest this idea of meaningful work, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna contend that because what the hell is meaningful? You do some sort of charity work, right? That's the first kind of work that's considered meaningful. You do charity work. You're basically doing work for free, and you're doing work that very clearly, at least in the capitalist sense, nobody else thought was worth doing anyway. Right? That's why it's charity. You're giving away labor. That's kind of a sucker's game. Charity's for stupid people. Right? That's how the
I mean,
capitalist system's set up because it's
I
specifically
feel
not
like a
for
lot of
profit.
charities would disagree with you, and a lot of
Yeah.
big businesses out of those charities would disagree
Well,
with you.
those big businesses ultimately they like charity because it's a way to launder their money without paying their taxes for a smaller fee. Essentially, they get to negotiate their own tax rate through
Yeah,
charity.
Goodwill is negotiating its tax rate for a slight discount on how much money it could possibly make.
Yes, by capping their profit and laundering it as non-profitable, right? They get to
Right.
then negotiate their tax rate down to a pittance, if anything. So that's the
But I
reason they're
mean,
doing it. But
my counterpoint is Amazon does that better by just being bigger.
well, Amazon does it by just intentionally running profit neutral, not a not for profit. They try to run as close to zero as possible. Um, by making it appear like they have more cost than they really do.
Right.
You know,
Well,
so
it's very expensive to pay our executives the multi-billion-dollar salaries.
correct. And we're going to put people who make $800 million a year on a fucking W-2 like that somehow is realistic. Like they're just workers like the masses, but they can tell the masses when to piss. So,
In their bottles.
let's talk meaningful. You think it's meaningful, right? That's what you tend to think because that's what we've been taught to think, not because it's actually meaningful or not, right? Um, Simply put, they may not want your fucking charity, but you can still run your fucking charity anyway because what does it give you? It gives you control. Let's say meaningful work is actually genuinely altruistic work, right? So we have to actually eliminate charity because the purpose of charity is main control over the capitalist system in a way that does not in any remote way injure capitalism that puts it on a fucking notice for its bad behavior. So charity ultimately is uncharitable. You're not handing money to people and saying do what you need to do. You're not handing a house to somebody who's homeless and saying now you have a place to live.
The
That
doctor's in today.
yeah.
He's just taking out all the fucking people. He's like, charity? Yeah, those bastards, they're bastards. And
Charity
let
is
me tell you why they're bastards.
yeah, please let me do. The purpose of it is to make sure that capital retains control over how poor people exist. That's what it's always been. That facet of it has never changed. So, you know, everybody always says like it's weird that socialists have a problem with charity. Well, the problem with charity is precisely the capital now determines what you need and if you're going to get it or not, and it has to be entirely at capital's benefit. There's nothing charitable about it. Our problem with charity is it's a fucking fantasy. It doesn't exist. That's what the genuine socialist answer to capitalist charity is. It's not real. Like Santa Claus isn't real either. We're sorry to burst your fucking bubble. You know, you're gonna
I
have to
mean,
you're gonna have to
my
get
assess.
over it.
I mean, my assessment of the two things is that like generally like normal people you meet that do charity are good people, and that
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that, or at the very least, there's nothing wrong with you like participating in charity. It's just as a structure, it's not. It's definitely not ideal.
as
That's
a,
kind of why it exists. But
yeah, as a system, it is shit. The people who do it, you're right, they're decent people.
but more
Better than
more than
me.
that,
But I'm
yeah.
not going to say they're not better than me. Like if you were able to like successfully quantify people, I guarantee you the people who do charity, the actual on the ground workers, 9 out of 10 times better than me. Obviously, I'm excluding the bosses and the managers, but I'm better
Yeah,
than them. You
I
know.
mean, my assessment has always been there's a certain amount of labor that needs to be done. That's like keeping the lights on, making sure everybody's fed, um, healthcare,
Yeah.
uh, building homes, things like that. That like definitely have to be done, and it's important to categorize that. We sort of had that categorization with like essential workers or whatever, which was just a funny category. God, that I feel almost nostalgic for those days, but anyway, we sort of had that categorization with that, but there's a certain amount of that absolutely must be done to make sure that like you know uh, we don't have a reality like anarchismus wants. We have to make insulin for people or whatever, right?
Right.
Um,
Well, here's the
you
question
do
posed.
well. Here's the just to finish the point. you do that stuff, and then you have a line where you have to meet that quota and count up to it and make sure all that labor is done. And then the work that you do that's not that is meaningful to you because you're choosing to do it. But in so creating that dichotomy, then counting up is also meaningful work, or made significantly more meaningful, I think, by having a system that's like that.
Yeah, so the
So
question posed, just so that you can answer it more accurately, by the way, John, was
oh boy, I definitely missed the question. So what is it?
no,
Yeah.
it's fine, it's fine. You were definitely addressing the way that Dan was answering it, regardless. So.
Well, Dan wasn't
Mm.
done, but Dan could talk all night on a
Yeah, fuck
question
Dan.
like this. Thanks.
Mm.
If we wanted Dan's opinion, we would get on a podcast with him, okay?
Uh-huh.
Touche,
the
I
question,
suppose.
the question that was sort of, posed originally was, David Hume has this argument about how to motivate people to do work that is pertinent, even if they don't feel it's pertinent. And
Okay.
the really simplified version of that is, if Dan and I live as neighbors and there's a field between us that needs plowed, right, and we can both share in that labor and save ourselves work, we can come to that agreement. And it's very easy if one of us doesn't show up the next day to be like, well, we're not doing this work today then, right? Or to figure out some other workaround for it.
Likewise, if only one of us shows up, it's obvious to tell who hasn't shown up.
Right. Whenever it's 1,000 people, it becomes a lot harder to say,
Not only
maybe
was
it
the
doesn't
work
matter if I'm
meaningful,
here,
yeah,
but also who isn't doing the meaningful work.
right.
And how do you best motivate people to do relevant things, even if they don't necessarily see the importance of the thing?
Well,
Yeah.
again, you have to zoom out to answer that question, I think. Because like anytime you just try to address that question on the ground, like to the person who's like, I don't know, man, we have like 1,000 people working here. Why can't I just not show up? Like, yeah, you can do some sort of motivational speech to them, or essentially trick them. But you can do some sort of managerial thing like that. But that doesn't meaningfully answer the question, because it's a larger question than that. Like, why
Well,
is the person showing up like that?
yeah, I mean, I was still at the stage of what constitutes meaningful work to
Yeah,
answer the question.
Dan's really about coercion of labor. He really wants to do a lot of that.
Well, what even constitutes meaningful work, right? What makes any work
Sure.
meaningful, right? So I started with the one that gets most often called meaningful, which is charity. Whereas again, there are far more meaningful and frankly democratic ways to do charity work, right? So charity work under capitalism is sort of meaningless because its entire purpose is to support capitalism, right? It's just another way to launder profit. It's just a different way of viewing it, how you can be profitable. Maybe I don't actually turn a profit in the traditional sense, but since I save my tax burden and bury that, then I can still come out with a lot of money, right? Which is the traditional metric by which one is called profitable.
I
Large
mean,
holding. So,
in fairness, you're using a very disingenuous version of this argument.
am I? Because I'm literally questioning the word meaningful, and I'm a metaphysician. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, which
I
is
mean, I
start
can
by questioning
also
the premises.
you can also do that with like the communist position too. You can, take the role of like, oh, it kind of doesn't matter if
You
one or two of them don't show up because you can just, utilize the labor from the others and you'll still turn a profit and drive a Lamborghini in Russia.
Well, most communists aren't worried about profit, so that you were almost there, my friend. But
I'm Yeah,
and
most communists aren't
second,
worried about profit except for the bourgeois top that ends up driving the Lamborghinis in Russia. And again, I recognize that this is a very disingenuous argument, but like that's the illustration I'm trying to make is that you're utilizing the worst possible version of it as the
I
standard.
I don't understand. Like you make these attacks, and I'm not sure you understand what I'm even. After all these years, I'm sure you don't even like. I'm not sure you understand my methodology. Like I have to question whether or not you understand what I'm saying sometimes because
I
like
do not. I'm
yeah,
mostly speaking French.
well, funny enough, if you're speaking French, go read your ass some Derrida. This is called deconstruction. This is the postmodernist tool, and it's their greatest gift of philosophy. Okay, this is the real value in postmodernism. It is the deconstructive method. So we got to see like when we're going to answer a question like this, it's an extremely loaded ideological question. So we need to start busting it down and removing the ideology. That's our opening move. That's what the Sons of Trier have always been about. We're going to try to
Right.
yank out the ideology and get to the core of the matter with a bunch of dumb guys from, largely speaking, the Midwest. We're going to do it. We're the great philosophers of the cultured Europa and the great American cities and the great. No, those people are failures because they're so up their ass about their own ideology they can't see the fucking forest through the ideology, you know. So we're gonna eliminate that. We're gonna use these tools to do it. So again, what even is meaningful anyway, right? And my answer to that is if the most in the economic terms, if the most meaningful work you can do, which is charity, is actually completely fucking meaningless and arguably more detrimental than anything, and the meaning derived therefrom is quantifying how damaging that is to the general worker. We're going to leave the word meaningful out of it. How do you get somebody to show up for work? In an in a capitalist model, you use an incentive, right?
Sure.
You use an incentive. That's the wage. And you also use a stick. That stick is the threat of homelessness, starvation, child separation. So you have to use carrots and sticks. We will pay you a pittance of a wage. Not a very good incentive by itself. $7.25 an hour, $6.25, a buck 25 in the 1970s. A minimum of a wage to encourage you to come to work because instead of nothing, you've got something. And then on top of that, what we'll do instead of sweetening the pot, making it more worth your time to come to work, we'll add disincentives from the behavior you want to be doing, right? And this is the notion of coercion because you can either take my shitty 7.25 an hour deal or of your own volition and free will, you can risk going homeless, you can risk starving, you can risk not having money for your medical bills, you can risk dying. So we understand very quickly and whether or not, and I'll say this too, I don't care what Hume's answer to this problem is. Okay, so if you go, well, you're making Hume, I don't know the ending. Remember, you only gave me the question. You never gave me the ending, so there's no disingenuousness. I'm not reinterpreting Hume. I'm answering his question posed. However Hume would answer it, he's answered it for himself already. I can go read about it if I'm really that interested.
Hmm.
So I want to be very clear there as well. I don't actually know this particular thought experiment, so I'm playing it live, right? I think sometimes the thought is that I just know all of this shit, so I never get to play along with the home audience too, right? Whereas it's quite the opposite. I mostly know a little bit about every philosopher, and then I just start guessworking from there based on their tenets, and I start doing deconstruction. I've got more hits than misses. Very proud to say, more hits than misses with that methodology. There's a lot of information to take in. I can spend the rest of my life reading it all, and I still wouldn't have. And even then, even if I had read it all, what would I have done but read a bunch of fucking books? Nothing. I would have done nothing useful at all. The search for truth rendered meaningless by my own inactivity and my acquisition of previously known truths with nothing to show for it. Junk. So, and the capitalist system, again, what is made meaningful is what drives profit. How do we actually get people to do that work to make that profit? We go ahead and add incentives and disincentives. That's the traditional classical economic thinking. The anarchist solution, the anarchists use the economics of mutual aid. So the anarchist solution clearly has to be some sort of notion that if the work was genuinely meaningful, they would have shown up to do it. If they felt free not to show up to do it, then there's really no point in it being done, or at least by that person doing it, right? Because meaningfulness is derived from the self, it's derived from them. If they decided not to do it, that's good enough. The decision affects them and them alone. The rest of society rendered bullshit and moot. Hey, what's up, Michael Jordan Peterson?
What's up?
Not much.
Hey,
Um,
What's happening?
yeah, what's crapping?
Oh, just keeping it gangster,
Damn right.
living that thug life.
Yeah, we're back in a classic one. Drew's not going to be able to make it. He's got some shit going down, and we need to respect our boy's time.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
shit does happen.
I don't know where Ainter's at yet. He's got 6 minutes. He'll show up when he does, or he won't show up. Who gives a shit? He's
yeah.
postmodernist. Nothing matters. That's the good thing about working with a postmodernist. Nothing matters anyway, so you can't offend them.
Talking
I
about,
wish
yeah.
I unironically
They
wish I
found
was
the
that
right
great.
show for that.
Yes, they certainly have. We're their best friends by complete accident. But I'm not even shitting you. The deconstruction method, where we start looking at the definition of the words even being chosen, that's critical, right? So now, what do we say as a socialist? like the anarchist, to some extent, if the work's not being performed, we tend to use meaningful. I tend to prefer the word critical, at least, right? What is critical? And I'm going to define that as stuff that keeps people genuinely alive, right? So let's say caring for the elderly, caring for individuals who cannot care for themselves, those in the iron lung. I like the iron lung. It's a good piece of visual imagery, so let's use that, right? People who can't care for themselves. Generally speaking, we need to feed people. We need to make sure children are safe, right? We need to make
In an ideal
sure.
world, yes.
Well, if we're going to talk what is actually critical or meaningful work, I think we have a definite answer for that, and that's stuff that if it is not performed, then death ensues, or abject misery ensues. Like, it doesn't have to be death. If a child goes unwatched and breaks its leg, the child hasn't necessarily died, but we can call that miserable enough that we should try to prevent it.
Sure. Yeah,
You
that makes
know.
sense.
As a general rule, meaningful work is work that anarchists would say they should be doing themselves. Like children, somebody making sure that children aren't out outside in the middle of freezing Russian winter. The anarchists would say they have their own responsibility to come inside if they want to, because the indoors is fascism. So we can clearly say that just being inside a building as a participant and advocate for fascism in the traditional Holocaust sense in his mind, because he's he's deranged. That's not a philosopher. That's not a commentator. That's somebody who has a fucking mental illness and is deranged. So generally speaking, anything that deranged asshole would say is the responsibility of that infant is something somebody should be doing for it, right? Keeping it fed, keeping it clothed, keeping it from being covered in its own piss and dying of preventable rashes. All that sort of work. We'll call that meaningful or critical. And it is not. There is a weird combination there, because it is important to some extent who does that work. Obviously, Johnny the pedophile can't be doing that work. I think we all agree by default.
Sure, I definitely don't want Johnny the pedophile doing that work.
Yeah, Johnny the pedophile needs to be doing the very hard work of filling a pine box.
It's tough work.
Yeah, it's tough work, but somebody's got to do it, and hopefully Johnny can rise to the challenge of doing that work.
We got a whole lot of people.
I don't know
that's
about
gotta
rise
put in
to
there.
that challenge.
They got to make it work. He's got to make some space.
Yeah, the best work we could have them doing is digging their own graves before we help them fill them. So we can't have Johnny the pedophile doing it. We can't have Johnny the homicidal maniac watching the kids, right?
Yep.
I think that goes without saying. We can't have, to some extent, we can't have Johnny the kid, the radical cool teenager who teaches kids to smoke and drink and turn
Probably not our best choice, although technically better than the previous two Johnnies. People should really just stop naming themselves Johnny.
Yeah.
Can we let grimdark fantasy villains?
No, grimdark fantasy villains should not be watching the kids due to the inherent abusive relationship. No.
Probably better with dark teen Johnny, honestly.
They're probably, yeah. Funny enough, they're still safer with Johnny, the kid who teaches children how to make flamethrowers out of spray paint cans and matches. Still better off with him. Although again, we're really
those are pretty good odds.
Yeah.
That bar was not very high, though, to be fair.
Yeah, we're at a tight 50 depending on Johnny's mood, so But I point this out because those are the kinds of people we would want to screen out of taking care of small children, elderly people. We would not want these people doing it, right? Johnny the wife beater probably shouldn't be in a domestic care situation.
Ooh, cops.
Cops, yes, the people who tend to become cops in our society are precisely the people who shouldn't. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm driving at here. So, we do need some mechanism to control who is and is not doing that meaningful work. Likewise, if we have a sufficient amount of people to make sure there's complete and even overlapping coverage on that work, is it all right if somebody takes a break from doing that work? Surely we would say so. It would be hard to say that some people have to live as martyrs. Paradoxically, even though Johnny the homicidal maniac cannot take care of grandma and grandpa, as
You
long
should
as
have a
they're,
day off.
yeah, he
A
can
lot of days off.
have 7 days off and just not do that job.
Whoever does the
Paradoxically,
screening is important too. It sounds like.
yes, yeah, it becomes pretty fucking important, right? How we determine who gets to do the tough job of screening people to do these jobs.
Yeah, which Johnny are you?
Yeah, the methodology by which we do these screens are very hard. So the methodology by which we develop these tests has to be.
Peddlers?
What's that?
Peddlers?
Diddler. Yeah, we can't let diddlers design the anti-diddler test. Can't do that. So the methodology by which we establish, the point of that is the methodology by which we establish these systems has to be rigorously vetted. It cannot be as simple as a few loose rules that are a token appeal to the public that can be easily ignored and profit, right? That's an insufficient way to determine this. We've seen how that turns out. Johnny's a homicidal maniac, or in most cases, Janie the homicidal maniac gets to become a nurse.
Ooh, that's slick. You can tie Johnny the homicidal maniac as a corporation, isn't he?
Yes, I think if Johnny the homicidal maniac comics were more about Johnny wantonly killing for profit, he would have been a perfect allegory for corporations. So, Hume is right. We actually do have a responsibility to tease out what is meaningful, or as I like to say, critical, right? Somebody has to keep the nuclear power plant running, and it can't be somebody invested in blowing up nuclear power plants.
Shocking.
I know. I know it's weird. I keep putting all these rules on you, man. But
Sounds like fascism to me, but whatever.
that sounds like a lot of hot fascism. What if a guy just wants to blow up a
Don't
nuclear
tread
power
on
plant?
me.
Don't
Yeah.
tread on me.
Listen, if I want a nuclear warhead in the shape of an entire factory in the middle of a dense city center, I think I should be allowed to have that.
Tyranny of the majority. Tyranny of the majority, sir. You can't tell me not to.
You know who should be in
nuke.
charge of the nukes? It should be that guy.
Yeah, the guy who screams tyranny of the majority as he's building his doomsday device in the middle of L.A. What is that? This is just this is a cloud a cloud of nanobots that will condense into tentacles and rape everybody on the planet. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. Tyranny of the majority, that's fascism, sir.
Listen, the bad guys have their own nanobots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one thing that can stop a bad guy with a raping nanobot.
It's a good guy with raping nanobots.
Right.
Nanobot rape machine. Yeah. So,
Ooh, Nine
A
Inch
dick
Nails.
ripping robot has never been more relevant in our lives.
yep, the dick ripper, the old dick ripping telling me I can't have a dick ripping robot unleashing on society is
I
fascism.
still need my ship.
Anarchismus. To be fair, though, anarchismus also sees the invention of the machine as fascism. The machine itself to complete any task, be it hammering a nail, cell phone
Ripping a
communication, or ripping off a dick, is fascism. So he would have to do a fascism to fight your fascism, and then you'd put him in a really awful spot. So you've done a double fascism to his zero fascisms by the rule of negation.
Do they? Yeah, they balance out, right? That's
Yeah.
how that works.
That is in anarchism's most deep thought, which is anything I don't like is fascism.
I don't even
Right.
know who this is. It's great.
Yeah, it's pretty
Nice of a
great.
definition.
You know how
He's a thought leader. He's a thought leader who we discovered on Twitter. He's excellent.
actually
Did
fun
you say
fact.
cult leader?
Yeah, cult leader.
That's a
leader.
thought, but that's accurate too.
Ass a thought. That's a hot name.
Man, you really called that shit where he just like fucking said FBI points like verbatim.
Yeah.
that was amazing.
Yeah, dude, right? I can always tell when an anarchist is not an anarchist. I can always tell because again, actual anarchists, I'll have that debate. We get along on a lot of things, and I'm certainly going to team up with them readily when it's time to go bust somebody's shit for being a complete asshole. No fear. I will run to an anarchist's aid whenever it's time to bust on an asshole. And we will disagree on the finer points. But our overall point that capitalism is complete shit needs to be fucking rent asunder and something new needs to take its place that is more human focused. Absolutely. 10 out of 10. Agree. That's a friend. Yeah, it's that's no different than how Jenk and I are. We just there's some disagreements, but we love. The love is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why, you know what though? That's what people sometimes think I'm weird because like I bust on anarchist thought because I don't like objectively don't like it, right? I'm not an anarchist. But then like when people like I cannot tolerate anarchists being misrepresented. I have seen anarchists who will be like, I don't like communism, but that certainly is not what you're talking about is nowhere near communism. That's insulting. And I respect that greatly. It's exactly how I feel about their anarchism. Like, listen, I don't like anarchism either, but what you're saying is complete bullshit, and it is slander, sir. You will not talk about them that way, not in my presence.
Well, you know, I get to
That's
talk to
our
them like
word.
that.
Yeah, you don't get to misrepresent it and pretend like you actually don't like anarchism, you piece of shit. You just don't like capitalism and refuse to say capitalism. You know, I'm very stringent on that. By the way, this is the live stream. I'm Dan Cohen. I'm the doctor of metaphysics. I'm the sucker of mega dicks bitch and
Dickus.
dickus. Suck more dickus is my alias. It's so much fun. And I'm joined by John Sinclair,
Yes, sir.
the human yarmulke clip, the sexiest man in Arizona.
These are very kind words for an inaccurate description.
Well, I've seen the rest of Arizona. You are winning.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah,
There's
it's
gotta
a little
be-
desolate here.
Yeah.
Some Japanese porn star in Arizona.
No. California.
I'm doing some research now.
And
Sorry, I'm out.
Yeah, see you later. And I'm joined by Michael Jordan Peterson.
Gangstacles is in the house.
Is it Gangsta Cleese? You love doing this to me. You love it. He's capricious, but not malicious. And the ladies.
I had to pull back on the Michael Jordan Peterson after seeing that last clip.
No, that makes it funnier. That made it. That sealed it forever to me. You are Michael Jordan Peterson.
Oh, okay, great. He earned my stripes for me.
Yes, you are the goat. You know what though? If I wanted to be mean, I'd say because you are the goat of bad takes.
Dunking on him. Dunking on him. I'd be on fire, man.
But I don't want to be mean. I like your takes. We have finer point disagreements in thought, and they go along wonderfully. And finally, last but certainly not least, Jank Engels, who
Self-hating capitalist.
he cleans his room.
Back for another round.
Arguing with him, it spells your doom.
Oh, I don't know about that.
In your pants, he'll make you go boom boom.
I do know about that.
Yes, he'll make you shit yourself.
Since we have a round table of experts here, I do want to ask this question.
Yeah.
Did Hitler clean his room?
Oh, he absolutely did.
You know what, man? Okay, so spoilers.
Oh, he's got it made.
Spoilers.
No, I mean, I presume John Sinclair refers to like growing up. Did Hitler clean his room?
And by made, I mean
No. I mean like literally. Like, was his room a mess or not?
No, it was not messy.
As the Führer.
Not at all messy.
No, I mean like growing up and before he was like in power and had
before he was in power, I bet he was meticulous about it. Because
if he was in art school, he didn't clean his room.
Cleaning their room.
If he was in art school, he didn't clean his room.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he failed out of art school.
Oh, then he definitely cleaned his room.
Exactly.
He spent too much time cleaning his room, not working on faces. And where'd that get him? 6 million dead Jews. That's where it got him.
Yes.
Fucking So okay. So we watched a clip from an old lecture of Jordan Peterson about one Mr. Adolf Hitler, and I want to reiterate that if we're talking strictly about Carl Jung, Jordan Peterson actually has insights. You don't have to like all of them, but they are substantive, and this is going to sound heretical, but worthwhile insights. I say that because before I say my next sentence, I want you to understand this is not just a blind attack on Mr. Peterson. Okay? The man knows dog shit about like world history. By dog shit, I mean absolute nothing. He's an empty vessel. The man
It's true.
is incredibly underinformed about the most basic things about world history. And understand that world history encompasses so very much that even experts basically know next to nothing. And the nothing he has inside of him as it comes to world history, especially something that has been fucking rehashed and rehashed and re-examined ad infinitum. It will be ad infinitum because it is the crucible by which the modern world was born. You know, it was the fiery catharsis of the old. Okay, the man knows dog shit about it. Just an embarrassingly low amount, like so little that if he were cognizant of how little he knew, he wouldn't talk about it. I'm convinced of that. Okay,
So
I think he has enough self-restraint that if he really were that fucking stupid on it, he would not run his mouth at all. And I have to make that painfully clear because his commentary on Hitler was that Hitler was not a logical person, that an Austrian was not somebody driven by the most cold and calculating mechanical German logic of the German Empire. Somebody who fanatically worshiped the German monarchy and the German order was not fanatically driven by a cold machine logic to an inhuman capacity. Okay? Somebody who was doing that much fucking meth and running the numbers was not driven by cold machine logic, because how could he miss simple facts like you can't invade Russia in winter? And that seems like a simple fact now because we watched what's happened twice
He,
to the
he didn't
Russians.
do it literally in the whatever. That's
Uh-huh.
yeah. All right, you're right. You're right. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yes.
Oh my god, I can't believe you said some shit like that. Fuck.
No, it gets worse. He points to Hitler as somebody whose logical end was sheerly the extermination of the Jews. That was it. He had no interest in winning the war. All of that was pure propaganda. You know, fascists don't mean what they say. All that kind of shit. So like his entire goal was merely the extermination campaign. Like he was the literal devil, right? Like that's what he manifested as. And instead of, you know, the reason I want to point this out and how painfully silly this is because if you're a Jungian, right? If you're a Jungian, one would think the most obvious, the painfully stupid answer. If you were going to give a painfully stupid answer, you would give the painfully stupid version of Carl Jung's anger, which is where Hitler believed himself to be Wodan. Instead of just having prophetic dreams and dreams of substantive meaning, he wanted those dreams to cross into reality. That he himself was Wodan incarnate. He was the great Odin. He was the will of Germania. And that by unifying the state under him, only then could Germania thrive. Right?
I walked
Not,
into a wild ass part of this conversation.
yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. By the way, here's our guest, Aintershow. What's going on?
Hey, my bad. I didn't realize. I'm fucking.
Don't worry about it.
He walked
Oh,
into some shit.
listen, we just
You did walk into the worst part of the shit.
or technically speaking, the coolest. We're talking about Jordan Peterson's classic comments on Adolf Hitler and how he said that Hitler's only goal was mayhem, that he was just a literal devil, an agent of chaos, and
really
by the
did.
way, he's a fucking Jungian, right? So literally, the stock dumb guy Jungian answer is that Hitler believed himself to be Wodan incarnate. He was the living fucking thing. He transcended humanity to become Wodan in Germania, and that through him, the will of Germany could be truly expressed. And there was no other way around it. So, of course, he was the most important thing in the world. He's literally fucking Odin, for fuck's sake, right?
Yeah, this is why I don't like this fucking Jung shit, because it just sounds like Jung was like the fucking young, what is it, young adult critics that we have now.
Yes.
Except for like all of history. That's all that shit sounds like to me.
Like you talking Carl Jung?
Yeah, Carl Jung.
Yeah, he was pretty pissed off about having to listen to people's problems, listen to his shitty parents be shitty parents and lie about it.
Yes.
Carl Jung is like a very bizarre character for me. Like, because like the more you read Carl Jung, the more you realize he was just a shit poster before there was any like forums or threads or anything.
Yeah.
Because the reality,
of the highest order.
Yeah, and like I think that people like he was on to some things, but like everything that every time he got really close to figuring shit out, he would instantly like just be like, and then Freud said, and then fucked it all up, right?
Yeah.
But like I think the thing that he was really right about and kind
They're
of
always
like,
petty.
kind of
Yeah.
fucking brings a lot of shit home is when he was talking about like the collective consciousness, because he was low key inventing hyperstition, right? Which is real. Like that shit is real. Like you can see it, it's happening. Especially the internet is incredibly powerful at doing that. And like things don't exist until enough people believe in it, and enough of those beliefs can propagate online to literally affect reality. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. No, I
like
100%.
Yeah, you don't want to give like posters credit for that. Like, you don't want to be like, actually, posters on Twitter are affecting like like reality on a massive scale, but they are, right? Like it's unfortunate that that's the case, but that's the truth. And like
their delusions, when their delusions line up with somebody's self-interest, they certainly have a destructive impact.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like
if you're talking Hitler, right? Like fucking Hitler's entire worldview was that his shit, like, I don't know, I don't think he believed that shit personally, right? In fact, I don't think anyone
did.
I don't think anyone does. I think that's like ascribing too much to the personality, right? Like
the ardent fanatics. I
think
they get too far in their lie and they just start to believe it themselves.
No, I think people of that nature tend to do the rationale monster, like
where
they just are like, well, like the reality is like I'm a very important figure for Germanic history, and if they want to put that on me, then that's the way it is. But I don't think that they like I've like met enough psychopathic I like deal with psychopaths online all day. Very few people are legitimately like
believe their bullshit.
Yeah. Even the people who do believe their bullshit, like
don't
they
believe
rationalize
their bullshit.
They rationalize it using other like methodologies. They don't say it's real, if that makes any sense.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the dumb guy Jungian version of Hitler is that he believed himself to be Wodan incarnate. He is the high god of Germania, and that his will is absolute. And by sheer force of will, Germania, as channeled through him, will be successful. That's why you have to lock up the state, and make it an entity revolving around his whims, because you have to follow the whims of Wodan. Right? That's what can bring Germania prosperity, and the eradication of the Jew is the eradication of the enemy. Eradicate the enemy externally and internally. Again, I'm not saying this is right by any degree, but if you're a dumb guy Jungian, right, this is your interpretation. It's like it's handed to you right there. It's just, he goes beyond dream and he tries to merge it with reality, and it is an utter disaster because you can't reconcile fantasy and reality in this specific way. But that was his end goal, right? Now again,
it works. I mean, that works both ways though.
Well, I want to say I don't believe any of that bullshit. But again, if I were a dumb Jungian, like that's how I would interpret it, because it's such a soft toss.
Yeah, well, that's getting like, I don't know. It works both ways in the sense of like there's always chaotic agents that want to utilize that kind of like fucking dumb mentality of like, I am the chaos agent, I am Wotan, versus like, there are other people who legitimately want to build and create a better world, and they want to do that via all kinds of different means and methodologies. But like, it's just a matter of getting enough people to agree, not even really agree, but to believe in them. Do you know what I'm saying?
The tricky part is they have to accept it.
Consent and belief are similar but different, if that makes any sense, right?
Perfect
because
sense.
because consent means that like I don't necessarily like I'm just giving like I have to by law consent to pay my taxes. Right? Like by law I
Yes.
have to consent to do a lot of shit that I don't really fucking want to do, but I do it anyways, right? Like that's really it's consent without actually being consent, whereas belief is like no, I not only am I like happy to do this thing, like I want to see it go further. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And like for me and my like personal fucking project of like this little homie project thing that I've been working on, belief is way more important than consent. And like I'm not trying to trick people into believing in anything or anyone, but I am trying to like I guess foster belief in themselves as a larger collective. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, kind of like the Hail
Yeah.
Satan thing. Hail Satan, hail yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't know, their shit is kind of like not to hate on them because there's a lot of crossover between homies and Satanists, but there's a little bit of a fucking like
You can hate on
cringy
them.
attitude. Well, there's like some cringe like that's like, you know, motherfuckers will be like that's it's a slippery slope to Jeffrey Epsteinism, right? Where like, no, I if because I'm capable of doing it, that means that it's good. Like, no, fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like that's right. Like,
Yeah. Well, how far are you away from a fucking ANCAP? How far are
yeah.
you away from an ANCAP weirdo? Once you believe that "do what thou wilt" shall be the whole of the law, like once you believe that, like you're just an ANCAP. Like thanks for playing, nice try, way to dress it up with the fucking goat statue. That was
Yeah.
cute, but you
Yeah. My shit is more or less do what you can for the homies, right? That'll be the whole of the law,
far
right?
far superior model,
Yeah.
far
Yeah,
superior.
you know, I was actually thinking about that kind of topic this week, and
Oh, we're
it got
getting
me
to
to think.
yours. We're getting to
No,
yours.
no,
Don't you worry.
not
Don't
that specific,
segue
not
yet.
that
Don't
humor.
segue yet. Don't
No, I'm
give away
not
the game.
segueing. I'm addressing what he said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So the thing that I was thinking about with that is just that I know, you know, Dan and I and maybe other people, you know, like us have reached this part of the political spectrum through basically just hearing enough arguments enough times. At least that was me. Like I'm the only person I think I know who like listened to Anita Sarkeesian videos and like believed them and then kept listening to things like that and like
Mhm.
arrived here.
Yeah.
Most people don't fucking do that, and the idea
No.
that people do that is ridiculous. But
Yes, it is. Good.
yeah, I'm literally the only person who like heard that shit and I'm like, oh, she has points, and like
Mhm.
didn't fucking just have my brain melt.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of people, I think, when it comes to this kind of thing, and you know, I'm not a Maoist, but I think Mao had this point right, which
Hey,
is that like,
listen.
hmm?
Mao was right. Without a people's army, the people do have shit. They have
But I
nothing.
think that a lot of what happened with Maoism was that like people did believe it. Like I don't think he like fucking. I don't get the impression that like the entirety of the peasantry just like read everything he had to say and was convinced by arguments. They felt it on some
No.
level, and that is severely lacking on the side of the political spectrum. Any amount of like belief or feeling that things are correct is, I mean, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't be fucking arguing constantly if we believed this stuff, like in our heart of hearts, because we're so obsessed with like having to know it, and it's not something that you can 1000% know.
Well, that's because you were like not you, like I'm not talking to you, but like
You
the
mean
left in
me?
general. Yeah, I'm talking no, the left in general, right? Legitimately has been Cohen prode and like beyond fucking recognition at this point. And
That's a fact.
not only just in America, but like literally everywhere where it's like if you don't know exactly what I know, then you're wrong.
Then
And
you're
like
that, and you're clearly the enemy.
yeah, so like for me, I'm approaching a lot of the homie shit is really based on like Zapatista and Zapoetics, where they don't even really consider themselves left, right? They're strugglers. They're struggling against something. And if you are struggling against something, then fucking you're part of the team. It doesn't matter where your beliefs lie beyond that. And if your beliefs lie to the point like the real like only cap to that belief is that like if your beliefs legitimately stop another human being from being capable of expressing themselves in their fucking like not just expressing themselves but like just living their best life, right? Really like embodying this idea of the homies, which is that you know the only thing every homie wants is that all of his homies live their best lives. If you have something that will keep you from being able to do that for another person, then you're not getting it, right? And like that shit to me is like it simplifies fucking everything, right? I every now and then I'll like have some friends in there talking like leftist shit, and my fucking first thing I tell them is like, hey man, that's cool, but like you're scaring the hoes. You know? like nobody cares. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, like nobody fucking. I'm sorry, man. Like, I'm glad that you feel that way, but the reality is, like, unless you're doing something, nobody cares. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Got a point
Like,
there.
nobody cares about your like. If you have a food bank, right? A homeless guy like walking up to grab like to get food from you doesn't care that their food came from a Maoist. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
that's not something that matters, right? Like if you're out here doing direct action in the sense of like feeding people, clothing people, helping people, it doesn't matter if you're DSA or a Maoist or a Democrat or whatever the fuck you feel like calling yourself. You are doing something. You're a homie. You're being a homie. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that's like the real distinction I make, at least for me. And it gets people really fucking mad at me online because they are invested in having like a structured approach to how they got indoctrinated into how they feel about things, because there is a limit, there is a level. They want you to buy the books, they want you to read their critiques, they want you to listen to their socialist podcast, they want you to do all of these things.
I'm feeling personally attacked here. I got to tell you.
Well, like, they want you to buy in. They want you to buy in, and they want you to fucking, pay up and give money. And I get it. Look, hey, everyone.
Oh, I got to
needs
get my
to-
membership dues over to you, by the way.
Yeah.
Everyone
Hey,
needs
as soon
to-
as you can.
Everyone needs to make their money, right? Everyone, I fully understand that, and I fully look. I'm on the grind. Support the homie on the Patreon, but regardless, like, everyone needs their money. Everyone wants their money. Everyone wants to get paid, and I get that. But I think like even from a fucking like a market share like perspective, it makes no sense to say if you're not exactly this, then fuck off, right? It's just bad business.
Right.
If you really want to like
Hmm.
like get from a capitalist perspective, that is a fucking terrible business model.
Well,
Right?
that's
You have
precisely it. That's partially why their rejection takes the form of, no, you got to have this particular indoctrination. These people are wrong because of X. These people are wrong because of Y, and you need to pay me the money,
yeah
right? So instead of it, if we were to look at it from the
Mhm.
market perspective again, instead of it being a watered down,
Mhm.
bland version of it, the goal would be to make a hyper exclusive product that you can be a part of if you buy the bullshit.
Yeah.
That's generally the game being ran by the left. And I miss the old days of truth seeking.
I think truth is gay. I think knowing things is gay.
Yeah, no, I don't really care if it's gay or not. That's not. Last time I checked, that's not the problem. The problem is that we live in a world that's deceit and lies, and without the truth, we can't get through it. But then we have to find a metric to get there, which is the never-ending struggle, right? You're always permanently locked in a struggle to do that.
I think like you can. I don't know. I feel like I've removed myself from the wheel, the samsara of looking for truth at this point, because I don't give a shit about what's true because I've decided what is right in my mind, right? And like the metric I use by what is right is by like what is impacting the most people around me in a positive way, right? Like, and I feel like that's not a hard decision to make. Do you know what I'm saying?
Doesn't necessarily sound hard,
It's
but
not a complete
remember,
monster.
that's kind of, that, to be fair, kind of how Hitler saw it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
look,
I'm going to
hey,
positively impact the
hey,
Germans who are
listen.
people by getting rid of everybody who isn't a
And
person.
that's why that's why
You know,
I
no,
personally am against anyone. Like one of my things that
I
I
would
tell people is
I would say too, that's why I don't follow those Eastern philosophies, because we fall into the same traps we do in Western philosophies. We're just gonna play games about who is what.
yeah, no,
The game, the ultimate philosopher's quandary, right? What is harm? Ultimately,
yeah,
is that can you do harm? It's a yes or no binary, and then from there,
yeah,
all other ideologies stem, because that's the ultimate question. What
yes,
can is it okay to do harm?
yeah.
You
Where
know,
like I think kind of like the shortcut here is the presupposition is that everyone is a homie, right? Like everyone is all like that's literally It doesn't matter if you're left, right, if you're fucking actively against it or you hate it and you don't want to choose to be part of it. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter. You're part of it already.
you're just a homie who's fucking up. Then that's all. You're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
fucking up a little
Exactly.
bit, which
There's
means
a
you need to be told you're fucking up.
yeah, and like that's I think like that part of the thing kind of confuses. There's this great like I don't know what it's called, but it's like a Mesoamerican. It's not even. It's like Mexican folklore shit about like the snake. I don't know if it. There's this.
Quetzalcoatl.
It's no. It's like it's Mexican. It's like Mexican. It's not. It's like it might even not even be Mexican. It might just be like fucking Chicano stories that like grandmas tell people. But my grandma used to tell me the story, and like everyone I know, grandma's told them this story about a woman and the snake, right? And so a woman is washing her clothes by the river, and then a snake fucking walks up, or not walks up, but slithers up.
It's
And
badass when it walks up.
hell yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, just
slithers,
hopping on its ass.
slithers up and falls into the river and starts drowning. So the woman goes and runs and rescues the snake, and the snake's been in the river for a while, so it's cold. So she decides to put it on top of her freshly laundered clothes, and where it's drying, and warm up the snake. So she's carrying the snake back in the basket, and she lifts up the basket to see the snake, and the snake bites her and poisons her, and she's like, slowly dying, and she looks at the snake and she goes, "Why did you bite me?" And the snake goes, "Bitch, I'm a snake. What did you expect?" Right?
Yeah.
And then as with her dying breath, she tells the snake, "It was foolish of me to trust you, but I forgive you because after all, you're a snake." And like that like maternal instinct of like forgiveness in the sense of like, I I will like forgive you for your trespasses because even though I expected more from you, I also know your
Uh,
character. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
so much more, I don't know, nice than the version that I heard of that. Because the version that the version I heard growing up was just the scorpion and the frog.
Yeah.
But that's like
fuck you.
complete nihilism.
That's white people telling their children like, "Yo, there's no hope." But like,
Yeah.
It is. That's
That-
amazing that there's such
that-
a difference between those two things.
Well, yeah, that's Christian forgiveness then overplanted upon fucking the Greek fable, the scorpion and the frog or what have you, or whatever that fable. Whoever wrote that fable, I don't really give a shit. That sounds Greek to me.
well, like the
Greek
forgiveness aspect is that like there's two things. There's two lessons that it taught me as a kid, and the two lessons my grandma said like, always trust a snake to be a snake, right? Like recognize and identify that kind of behavior. But on the flip side of that, like even if you don't recognize that behavior, once like a trespass has happened, forgiveness, and now you know. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that shit is more important. Like I think a lot of people don't have that mentality of like, I don't know. I think a lot of people have in their minds there's tons of things that they can lose. And that it's true. Like a lot of people have lots of things that they can lose. But like a lot of the stuff that people are actually afraid of losing are like material things that don't really matter in the long run. Things that can always be made back. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, and I think like especially on the left, like getting canceled, this idea of like getting canceled, which only really happens in like liberal spaces or whatever the fuck, but like those a lot of that shit that goes down really like is just it's a removal of like, hey, you had clout, you no longer have the clout that you had, and it feels bad to you, and you want to make steps, so you start policing your own language, you start policing the way that you see things, the way that you like approach things, and then pretty soon you're a lib, and that's like that's literally how it works.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is that I do think that it is possible, on maybe a more macro level for certain things to be manifested by the internet. Things like, fucking Bitcoin, now that we're going to, have that shit traded on Wall Street, and QAnon stuff, that kind of thing where people just believe in it hard enough, and like eventually it really does start to make inroads in reality. But at the same time, most of how Twitter and the internet really has functioned thus far is as a customer service line. And just as like a place where you fucking complain about people constantly and essentially do consumer advocacy to like try to harm people, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's what canceling is on some level, because another aspect of that is if you believe, or at least use social media as this customer advocacy platform, and yeah, if you do that stuff and you simultaneously like try to cancel people, and I'm not saying that the people who are canceled have not done something poor or whatever, don't deserve to like eat shit on some level, but if you use this system to accomplish that end, what you're essentially doing is believing that if you just have a perfect structure, society will flow from there and work correctly from there. And on some level, that's kind of liberalism.
Yeah.
That is the idea that you can build a perfect structure and society will work because of that perfect structure. And I think that there's more to it than that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with that. I think the one thing that I would say is that, like, to kind of like an addendum on that, is that like, look, I work, like, technically work customer service. I do this thing where I'm stuck in a fucking DM dungeon for like a major corporation, right? And fucking, I have to answer every DM, and we get like thousands of DMs a day, and it literally makes my brain scrape against literally insane people that like just are, I don't know how to describe, like, I deal with a lot of Funko Pop people and like Barbie doll collectors, which are like sick.
Is that what you meant with the Dark Souls posts?
Yeah, that's not a joke. I'm literally in a DM dungeon. People
Jesus
don't understand
Christ.
that nothing on my Twitter page is like a joke. I haven't joked about anything in like maybe 2 years. Right? Like I'm 1000% sincere online, which is why I think that like I don't have a huge following, but the following that I have fucks with me very hard. And I think that's why, because they know that any like peer into my life, they understand, oh, my man's is really going through it. But yeah, like,
Oh shit, he means it.
yeah. I'm doing this like DM dungeon thing, and like what you were talking about, like a customer service line. Like when I'm actually literally working in customer service line, and you would not believe what I've come to understand in doing it is that like there is a legitimate fucking lack of like, I don't know, agency, right? And so all I deal with on a daily basis is rage. People just fucking like people who have zero agency with this giant faceless corporation who have lost some money. Maybe it's $5, maybe it's 500, but like they have no agency. So they see me, they see, well, this is a small thing, and they just rage, right? And I
Yeah.
like all I can do for them because like I'm literally hamstrung by what I can physically do for them, like, you know, in without like being part of this fucking major corporation's like service department. What I can do is literally just be the punching bag. And what I've come to understand is that if you just are the punching bag and you take the hit and you just say what they said, you listen, you say, I listen to these things. I apologize for this stuff. I will do my best to communicate this to the company that this is your situation and it happened, and I'll try to get this fixed for you. Like 9 times out of 10, I get people, you know, after a few hours hitting me back up and saying like, hey, you know what? I realized it was like $5. I'm not worried about it. Or, hey, you know, like, I'm sorry to hear about, like, I'm sorry I raged at you. I was mad at the corporation. I wasn't mad at you. You know what I'm saying? And like, I think approaching people apology first, right, is way more powerful than being like, hey, fuck you, we got your money. You know what I'm saying? Like, which was
Which
the
is more
case.
fun, but it's not very helpful.
Yeah, and I think that everyone really, like, on a mass scale, everyone is feeling this, like, emasculation is a wrong word, but like just kind of like
Impotence.
yeah,
Impotence is right. Like that's
yeah,
the right word for it.
yeah. It's a complete like inability to do anything, like in every circumstance in your life. And like if you feel that way, you're not the only one who feels that way. But the thing is, no one around you is going to admit to it. No one around you is going to cop to that. You know what I'm saying?
But they
Like,
don't have words to articulate it. Now see, this is where the ideology helps just a wee little bit, because we communists do have a word for that. We we have a pretty big word for that.
it's called
So
alienation.
yes, yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what? Not to brag, it's where we're right. It's not to brag too much, but we nailed that one real
Yeah, I mean,
fucking hard.
the homie manifesto is not by any means like really a communist fucking work or anything. In fact, actually, that gets me in trouble. Like, I had a friend of mine
Yeah, it
that
would.
showed that manifesto to someone like a pretty big like Twitter account that was like, like trying to do some direct actions, and they're like, oh hey, this person is a person of color that made this like manifesto, maybe you want to put them on. And then they read it, and then they like DM'd us back and like, hey, this is a cult. And it's like, all right, big dog, like, because
That
we want you to give me all your fucking money, fuck out of here. But
that's when you just like got my ass, now join. Like,
yeah. Well, no, I think like
fuck it. If you
the re-
interpret it as a cult, fuck it. Yeah, hand me some money, bitch.
the reason why it got interpreted, and like this isn't the only, a lot of people a lot of people who think that they're smarter than me, and you know what, they probably are, but the thing is, it doesn't matter, I'm still smarter. But yet, like, a lot of people interact with it like, oh, this is a serious thing, this is seriously flawed, I have all these like, this part right here is wrong, and this is like he like doesn't understand this word here. And I always tell them, hey, like, you're literally looking at a podcaster's written thing called The Homies in the Self. It's obviously a shit post. It's a long form one, but the fact that you're digging so deep into it means that you don't get that it's a shit post, right? Like, I've created this dual edge where if you look too deep into it, you're stupid, but if you don't look at it hard enough, you're also stupid. You know what I'm saying?
Not to brag, but that's the shit poster's dream. So.
Yeah, no, I'm the James Joyce of shit posters. Like,
it's a clever move. I'm simply pointing out there that feeling of helplessness, we call that alienation, but the masses aren't allowed to know that, because any communism, any critique of capitalism makes you inherently gay, part of a homo Jew conspiracy with the blacks.
No, I think
the great replacement is coming. The whole 9 yards.
The flip side is that, like, I'm of the firm belief that all knowledge is gay. Period.
Well,
knowing anything is extremely the gayest move you can do.
Yeah, right.
But listen, I'm gay. I have sex with men, and there's nothing gay about that. Does it make it?
Okay, that I gotta argue.
I get straightest sex of all.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta. I do have the comment there that in a literal sense, it is like the gayest thing you can do. I do need to make that clear. Like,
see, that's the thing. Because until you've had sex with a man, you don't even know what gay sex is. How can you tell what is gay?
Well, I know what I'm not. Let me put it to you like this.
My argument remains: is it truly gay if you've never tried? How do you know?
How would you know?
I want to point out here that I know what I'm not having. So yeah. That's okay. It's not for me.
I've never eaten spicy food in my entire life.
If we were to
I don't like spicy food.
If we were to reduce,
I tried spicy food and I don't like it.
I'm 35.
Which one sounds like it's based on knowledge?
I'm 35. You're just making presumptions. This is like when people don't presume I have a disability or a drinking problem. Or my favorite one is when I'm Jewish, when it comes time to account all the people who are victims of anti-Semitism and how terrible. But the moment the Jews, my brothers and sisters, want to start arguing about what the problem with anti-Semitism is, and I offer, well, it's the fact the anti-Semites love Israel. That's where we're locked. Oh my God, you're not a real Jew.
If you are an avid listener to the podcast, you will know that we are an extremely Semitic podcast. Right? We are fully
That's
Semitic.
kosher.
Yeah, extremely. No, the joke was on a while ago that one of our
You mean like salt?
One of our old co-hosts did not understand what the term anti-Semitism was.
Oh boy.
Like, she's young, she had no idea what it was, but she was like, "Oh yeah, we stand." She was like, "We stand anti-Semitism, whatever that means." And then I was like, "No." And I had to correct them, like, "No, we stand Semitism."
I would like to.
I'd like to point out that my co-host does not speak for the podcast.
So, I'd like to return this model to the dealer.
Yeah, I'd like to point out my co-host simply doesn't know what that word means, and don't take that too literally.
Literally, she just thought it was a funny word that, like, or like some philosophical thing that I had made up for the week.
No, don't say that.
So I was like, no, we're a Semitic podcast. So now
Yeah.
that's the way.
That's
That's the,
and that's how we became the most Jewish podcast.
the full flip. No,
we had to. Now we love Israel.
Started learning
No.
Hebrew. Read the
Listen,
Torah a
listen.
few
All-
times.
all of our-
and the show is Shabbat Shalom, homies. Oh my god.
Look, I just want to say this. As the resident Jew of this podcast.
You are the alpha Jew of the podcast.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
indisputable.
As you know,
Who made
I had
him
the bar
alpha?
mitzvah, the whole 9 yards. There is no worse,
didn't vote
more
for
annoying
him.
part of Twitter than Zionist Twitter.
Zionist
They are-
Twitter is hell.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, honestly. Do they? Sometimes I think to myself, do they know how much of the stereotype they're performing, and also how much of the stereotype I'm performing by pointing that out?
Right.
Do they completely understand both aspects of this?
All I'm saying is this, all right? Until I go to Zionist Twitter for the day to just remind myself about how shitty things are, I'm like, the Jews have a bad reputation. Everybody's mean to us for no reason. We've done nothing wrong to deserve this. And then I go to Zionist Twitter, I'm like, we have all of it coming. Like, it's just that simple.
If you think Zionist Twitter is bad, Zionist Reddit.
Oh, that's
fucking
what they just get the long form post. Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Horrific. It is
I can't go
nightmare.
there because then I'm gonna have to reluctantly agree with Hitler that we deserved it. Like, I can't go there.
reluctantly.
That we had it coming. We asked for that
Well,
shit.
Dan's always made the argument that you can find a bit of truth in everything.
Yeah, like
Jesus. No,
all I'm saying is if all the German Jews acted like every Jew on Zionist Reddit or Twitter, they had their reasons. All right, we can't just dismiss them. All right.
I had to do a deep dive for my company, which is a fucked up thing because I had to learn about it, but I had to do a deep dive on Reddit about what's popular on Reddit.
Anti-Semitism and Zionism.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that came up of anti-Semitism in long form is a huge thing, and the reverse is that overt just Zionism, but they cross over and they're best friends, which is
Yes.
I don't know, you'll literally find a Redditor named user 14 words, right?
Yeah.
Being best friends with not Netanyahu for life, right?
Yeah.
And they hang out and they talk to each other, and it's insane to me. And having to explain to my company that hey, just trying to say there's a huge political side of fucking Reddit. It's a quagmire. Stay the fuck away from it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
trying
guys think you want to advertise there. You don't.
Yeah, you don't.
You don't. You really don't, though.
Well, when it comes to this kind of thing, we're doing the most anti-Semitic thing of all, which is making jokes.
Right.
And this is now I recently, and I will move through this as quickly as I can. I recently decided.
Please keep it going for another 32 minutes.
So
no more, no less.
Here's the deal. I decided to download my brain and put it into a simulator where it had brain worms, and I was like, what's the ultimate end of after that Chappelle shit, where Zionist Twitter was mad that trans Twitter wasn't supporting them enough when Dave also made the fucking Jews are aliens joke. And I was like, what's the ultimate end goal or end state of how liberals, and also not to, to some extent, Jewish liberals deal with humor? And the conclusion that I came to was they're just going to conclude that all forms of performative humor are anti-Semitic.
They have to.
And the reason that I think this really is because, one of the key factors of Jewish Twitter is absolutely being in constant fear that they're completely under threat. And my favorite quote, that there's going to be a pogrom on the West Side. Just totally detached from reality.
That If that's happening, the whole country's on fire.
Yeah, like you probably, if anything like that ever happened, like there are bigger problems.
Definitely.
So here's basically the theory. The first is, very simple. That a lot of people pointed this out. The first is anti-Semitism is just at its absolute most base level. It's an incorrect assessment of how the hierarchy currently is. So that's a pretty banal observation. But going from there, humor inherently creates an outgroup because no matter what type of joke you make, unless it's like a pun, no matter what kind of joke you make, you are saying that X group is inadequate or undeserving. And sometimes you point out why they are that and why they are where they are, and sometimes you don't. But regardless, you're saying that this group of people or person who is part of a group of people inherently is inadequate or undeserving. So if you don't provide context on that, what you are instead saying is that for some reason, that person is in the spot that they're in, basically for nefarious reasons. There's some problem with the fact that they're there, and even if they're at the lowest point of society, even if you're making fun of a homeless person, they still exist. And at that point, you're basically implying that they shouldn't be there.
You're simply pointing out that there is some sort of Jewish plot to put them there.
Well, here's what it says. Basically, it says that the fact that Jewish people are the target of anti-Semitism is tangential to the fact that anti-Semitism exists, because anti-Semitism is just when you incorrectly assess how the hierarchy is laid out. Because that is, at its base, that's what anti-Semitism is. You point out that some group of people are at the top of the hierarchy or close to it, and that they shouldn't be, but in reality, or somehow the truth is that your assessment's incorrect. Because that's what all anti-Semitism is, essentially saying, well, look how much power Jews have, they shouldn't have that power. And that in form exists separate from the fact that they're, that they happen to be Jews. And this theory, again, it's not 100%, like, yeah, they get the form of what anti-Semitism is basically correct, and they get the part of how humor works correct, but then they link the two and say, basically all forms of humor imply that people are in their spot in the hierarchy, and that if you don't spell out exactly X, Y, and Z reasons why they are where they are, then you're being anti-Semitic because you're suggesting that some nebulous group is responsible for it, and that's bad.
Which, if that way, you're also shielded from critiquing capitalism, by the way.
Yes. that is the ultimate that's the ultimate result of that.
My take on that whole thing is, well, two things. One, I still have one of the most Semitic podcasts of all time because it's not funny. So we've never even approached so it's, I agree with you. Anyways, secondly, I think one of my takes that I've never understood about anti-Semites, and like I got heat on this for a while ago. I had a friend, this is back when I was still on Facebook, and I was still on Leftbook and in all the fucking groups, and there was this Marxist chat shit. Anyways, it would always literally devolve into the Jews are running everything, right? It would always just, every time you get enough people on Facebook, that's literally how it just goes down.
110%.
So my favorite thing was to be listen, if you really are anti-Semitic, for real deal, straight, just don't like Jewish people, then letting the Jews stop you from doing anything seems kind of like a fucking cuck move, right? Right? So if you're truly anti-Semitic, then Jewish people just don't matter to you. You don't even think about them. You don't even care. You're living your life. You're having a good. And every time I would bring that up, it would get me instantly kicked from the chat. But also, it's a great fucking point that I've never understood about any kind of supremacy, right? Where like every fucking supremacist, like whether white supremacist, fucking any kind of supremacist, right? Like
Yeah.
literally just can't. If they really were supreme, if they really were the better of all the options, then it would be like ants to like would be comparing ants to fucking, you know, like humans, right? They're the needs and others, the shit that other people go through wouldn't even affect you. Like you would just be living, you would just be doing your own shit and having a good ass time. But
Yeah.
that is not the case. You know what I'm saying? Like the case is people have this like they don't believe it themselves, which goes back to like your earlier conversation about like the channeling Wotan and how fucking Nazis and all that shit. Like the reality is that, like no one believes their own bullshit,
Right.
especially not like literal, actual, real deal racist or anti-Semites. They don't. They literally can't believe their own shit.
No, because it's improbable. How is there an enemy that's quote unquote inferior to them, but also simultaneously so much more superior that it is ruining and ruling their everyday lives? You're right. The contradiction's too deep, right? The projection's not the word I want to use here, but what they're doing is trying to make up for their fear with overcompensation.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing, and that's an old game. We've seen people do that time immemorial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's all that bullshit really boils down to is just
Well,
so
I mean, like
overcompensating.
the way that I've learned to like, you know, to piggyback off of your belief that like all comedy is essentially anti-Semitism.
Oh, I don't think that.
I know you don't, but like
Yeah.
For the
you know,
purpose of this discussion, John, just humor the man.
no, I mean like
Just
this
admit that
liberal-
you think all humor is anti-Semitic, and that every time I make a joke at your expense, it's anti-Semitism done by another Jew. Just
the long form of like the extraction, the liberal extraction into that belief, right?
Mhm.
Is essentially you're doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to like okay. There's no way to say this that doesn't make me sound fucking insane. So I'm just gonna say
you'd be surprised how sane you'll sound on this podcast. I think you
one-
forget who we are sometimes.
one of the things that the right gets done, like gets really really fucking gets done well. And I don't mean the right like Ben Shapiro right. That's not he's in fact I think like he's left. He's like left of the right that I'm talking about, which is like the like Trump is God and I don't care. Like those guys, that's like those are more people like that in my like vicinity. I could throw a rock and hit 40 of those guys. More so than I can hit like a Ben Shapiro guy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like a strictly New York and San Francisco and like thing. I don't really like interact with those people.
He's a J.K. Rowling liberal. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yes. So
There's nothing different between him and a J.K. Rowling lib.
Those people fucking have like those Trump is God type guys. What they have that's really cool and that what we need is this idea that like if you know about something or like really really like have a lot of like knowledge about something, that's fucking gay and you need to stop. that's a thing that's actively keeping you away from actually like talking and like you know
Yeah, they don't like
meeting
nerds
other
and they can
people.
smell them out.
Yeah, and that shit
can.
like I 100% and want to like I do bring that, right? Do you know how many fucking nerds I deal with like on a daily basis, like that are always trying to get me into group chats about like, oh yeah, Marcus is a Marxist, and I'm like, bitch, where did I say that? Right? Like, not that I don't agree, I fucking agree with the immortal science for the most part, and I understand, like, I get it. Like, listen, all of Marx can be summed up with it ain't no fun if the homies can't have none. That's all that you need to know. Any more than that is just kind of like you're just being flowery to me, right? And that's some nerd shit. I don't care. Right? Like it's too much. Fuck out of here. I got shit to do today, right? Like I don't got time to fucking argue with you about like my interpretations on Hegel, right? I used to get kicked out of left book chats all the time for this, but people would say like, "Oh, Hegel is they're doing the dialectic." Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, shut up. Hegel's entire philosophy is shit don't be like it do till it does. That's it. That's it. Yeah. That's the full extent of it. Anything more than that, I can fucking.
Can we get some consensus from the doctor on that?
I can hear Dan like having an aneurysm.
I think you guys don't value their intellectualism.
I
think
I
that's
get
what I
called
think.
an intellectual all the time, and I hate it. It's the worst.
No, I'm saying I think you presume they're very anti-intellectual, which is the liberal trap.
Yeah.
I think what you're
I
doing right now is a massive liberalism because like I hang out with those guys all day at work. Let me tell you, they know shit. In
no,
their
listen.
heart of hearts, they know shit. However, the shit that they know is all romantic nonsense and bullshit and fantasy. But they are
They know
as
it real
convinced of it.
well.
They know it so fucking well. To say that they're not nerds in their own right is doing them a massive injustice and disservice. They don't want a nerd spewing facts. Here's what, like, let me give you an example. Let's take it back to my favorite topic, COVID, right?
Mhm.
One of my low key favorite topics right now is talking COVID because I always offend the shit out of libs when I say the phrase, yeah, like we should execute Dr. Fauci for his war crimes.
Mhm.
You know what's funny? They know intrinsically what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And like all I have to do is drop the phrase like, you know, he's the one who did that to the gay people, right? And they're like,
Mhm.
and he did it to the blacks, which is
Mhm.
also true. Like he did that
Mhm.
shit. They know that in their heart of hearts because 40 years ago, most of them were like, yay, Reagan's here. And then they brought in Fauci and then they
Mhm.
watched what he did and they approved, but now they're on the other end of it. So suddenly it's bad.
Mhm.
So they know nerd shit too. Don't,
No,
don't,
listen, I'm not saying listen, I'm not this is what I mean by like nerd shit, right? What I guess I'm trying to say is this. I had a conversation with a homie recently, actually. She was like having like there's no nice way to put it, but like kind of like a psychotic episode where she was like talking about like Aristotelian ethics and shit. And she was like I don't know. It was wild.
Aristotle is a mental
Yeah.
illness. All right, I'm back in.
Yeah, listen. Yeah, all right, cool. I'm glad. But I
I'm
essentially
in.
said, hey, like she was talking about how, like she goes, people don't have if people don't listen to like philosophy or people don't understand philosophy, I don't even view them as people. They're like subhuman to me because how can they even converse? And I looked at her and I was like, "Hey, big dog, what's it like being the smartest motherfucker nobody wants to talk to?"
Yeah.
Right? Think about it. Like you yourself like saying, "I'm the smartest person in the room. I've read everything here. I know blah blah." That's cool that you feel that way, but what is it like?
Yeah,
Like legitimately, what
what
is it
that
like?
get you? How does
Yeah,
it
like
feel?
and I think that like my beef with the left is that there's like an arms race, and especially like with the fucking I don't mean like the left is a hard thing for me to quantify because like the left to me is people online with like 5,000 followers on Twitter. Like that's what I'm talking about because like that's not the real left. The real left I know is my homies that like go out and like I volunteered to fucking food at a what is it at a food bank, and the homies there that run that shit, they're the left, right? They don't care about your fucking politics. They don't care about anything. When you talk about politics around them, they say, "Shut up. You're scaring the hose. I'm only here to fucking, make like feed the homeless because it makes girls want to fucking suck my dick." You know what? I appreciate that. That's cool. That is right and 1000% support it. They're doing direct action for fucking BJs. I can get behind that, right? What I'm saying though,
Is that
like
mutual aid? Is that what the anarchists call mutual aid these days?
that is what we call mutual aid. Listen,
Yeah.
if you're out there and you're trying to fucking get your fucking knob polish, you gotta give a little something out to the homies. That's the way it works. But anyways, like the left on like the online left, this fucking really shitheel online left that are just completely out of touch. They're monetizing people's ignorance and kind of like saying, hey, like we own the intellectual discourse around these things. You have to either listen to us or buy in to really know what we're talking about. And once you do, then you're a leftist. And the thing is, a lot of people who like are just offline, just doing their shit, having a good time, hanging out, they'll go on TikTok or they'll go on Twitter because they're in between fucking shifts at work or they're doing other stuff. And the first thing that the algorithm spits into their face is people like Vosh, people like fucking Shoe on Head, people who are supposedly the left. And the reality is that not only are those motherfuckers not the left, their specific intellectual brand of the left is actually detrimental. Like their intellectual rigor that they do, not all of them have that, but like, any kind of intellectual rigor any of these motherfuckers have is essentially just stupid. It's just it's nerd shit to scare the hose on purpose.
What? No. Clearly, clearly voting for AOC is an act of seizing the means of production. I don't know. That's clear. Marx was clearly writing about electing Latina women of color and saying the N-word on a stream. That's all. That Marx was prophetic in that regard. So I don't want to hear this slander of the new Diogenes that is Vaush, the ultimate, the Uber,
that whole
the left.
What's extremely funny to me about I don't know, that's why like the left, this idea of the left to me is just so fucking, I don't like it. I don't even like being called, like, I get it all the time and I don't fight the fucking, I don't fight that comparison because I do have the entirety of my fucking politics are free my homies, let them live their best life. Simple, that's it. There's nothing more than that.
Yeah.
And because of that, I constantly get called on the left. And that's because we live in a society. No, I'm kidding.
We do.
We do live in a society.
That is the goal, yes.
Yeah, we live in like this world where like people are so alienated not only from each other but from themselves that they have to hyper fucking like labelize every single action and thing that they do for it to make sense to them. And that just screams like you're just like, look, I'm in marketing. I'm in fucking advertising. Like, it's my job to know and do this stuff. What you're doing is you're making it easier you're making it easier for you to be sold to, and you're making it easier for your movement and ideas to be sold.
That's that's a legitimate problem we have. I agree with that. It's did you are you familiar with Zizek? I have a feeling you probably superficially.
Listen,
yeah.
All right, I talk about it on the podcast, but here's the thing about Zizek. I have read everything from Zizek. Here's the thing. None of it is stuck. Not a single bit of it. But every now and then someone will say something.
Things.
So, well, no, I've read all of his fucking like stupid fucking internet shit posts as well too. Like I'm deep. I've read everything he's ever wrote for Russia Today, RT. Like I'm
okay.
deep in this shit. I'm a huge fanboy of Zizek. I love Zizek because I think like kind of we were talking about it in another chat recently about fucking like the pervert's pervert. I don't know.
The pervert's guide to ideology.
No. Like it's this idea of like the perversion of perversion where people like start backtracking. A friend of mine told me a story about how she's a sex worker online and she was selling her underwear and someone bought it and then returned it and complained that it wasn't stinky enough. And then upon some digging, turns out that like we found out that this guy, essentially what had happened was he felt bad, wanted to try and like undo the entire transaction. And so he like made up this convoluted story of, it wasn't stinky enough for me. When the reality is he busted his nut, came to like, he had this post-nut clarity of like, oh my God, I just can't believe I Venmo'd a woman $100 to send me some dirty underwear. Right. And so he like essentially wanted to reverse time. And that's like that shit is more perverted than just busting the nut and going about your business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like
because
and
that's
so, like,
the type of person who's introducing legislation banning people from buying panties online. Tell me I'm wrong. Go on.
No,
one
exactly.
of you try and tell me I'm wrong.
You're probably correct on that. But I mean, like,
why would I say you're wrong when you're right? I bill myself as the person who calls balls and strikes, sir. Thank you.
The true perversion of like our age, and this very Zizekian idea, like of like the true perversion of our age isn't like the things that we do that are perverse, but the idea that we have never, and like are removing any kind of like outlet for those desires. You know what I'm saying? Like that, the fact that like you are expected to be 100% like a perfect representation of some kind of like ethical fucking, some Protestant era ethics fucking, etched in stone type motherfucker. That is bad. Like, not only is it bad, it's actively destroying like humanity. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
right.
Destroying. Yeah. And
I don't know. It's honestly no different than the Prius consumption. right? The
Yeah.
Prius consumption, the problem there is by the time that car is actually going to have a quote unquote positive effect, you've already passed something like 10 to 15 years. So
Mhm.
you've done actually more environmental damage by flipping away and running to get the Prius because you want to look like you've done something useful.
Yeah,
It's
which
a
is perversion of perversion, right? Like just
right. Instead of just being a piece of shit and driving the shitty car, you
Mhm.
have to make it look like you have to go out of your way to overconsume and then make it look like you have some sort of morality and that you're
Mhm.
morally superior, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's yeah, that's very problem. Well, what I was getting, I got a little sidetracked there with the
Yeah, my bad.
yeah, you're good. Um, shit, I forgot. Never mind. Who gives a shit?
Well, so
My lungs hurt.
the secret sauce of the homie movement and the homie shit is this idea of the big other, the way that Zizek talks about the big other, right? Like this
Mm.
thing that keeps you from being able to express yourself and do the things that you want to do because you're fear of the judgment that you'll face from it. And it's not a real thing. It exists within you, but it's such a powerful drive that you
Oh,
literally won't do the
Mm.
things that you want to do. It's very much like Freudian fucking ego, superego shit. But regardless, he calls it the big other.
the
I
pathology is within you, right?
yeah,
The
yes,
cheating wife
Mm.
problem.
yes, yeah. Where I have flipped, I feel like I flipped it and call it the big homie, where where the big homie lives inside of you and is you, and you are also part of a larger connection of other people called the homies. The thing is, the homie doesn't want to see, like, the homie doesn't want you to fucking not do bad things. The homie wants you to live your best life. And how you live your best life is purely and fully decided by you, right? Now, you'll get a good gut check of whether or not you're living your best life based on the immediate people around you. Because if the immediate people around you see you living your best life as a detriment to their own life, then you got to change something. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I have a few friends of mine that were like hardcore fucking alcoholics, drinking themselves to death, could not figure that out, couldn't see that they were alcoholics, they couldn't see the writing on the wall, couldn't, like, did not realize that they were like the ones actively destroying their lives. They just thought in their minds they had a run of bad luck, right? And that's like a lot of alcoholics have that same fucking mindset of like, it's just bad luck, just got a run of bad luck, and fucking the booze has nothing to do with it. And
Yeah.
I kind of convinced them, right, through like talking about like, hey, like, think about how many times someone has had to scoop you up off, like off the front porch into the house. How many times someone has had to like fucking, get you because you pissed yourself somewhere. Somewhere, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, think about all the fucking times that you've been such a messy drunk that someone had to come and scoop you up and physically help you out of a situation, right? That, are you being a good homie when you do shit like that? And you know what? Like, they instantly were all like, yeah, no, I would hate that motherfucker. I would hate I would hate to have to continuously do that for someone else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like, that realization that they weren't being a good homie fucking really did change for them. And it's case by case. Not everyone fucking feels that way, but it helped. Like, and if something helps, then I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the left needs to go through a 12-step program. I think anybody who wants to be on the left has to go through a 12-step program.
I hated 12. I went through. I like did the worst thing possible. So I went through a 12 step program, but not for me. Right. So
That's a
like,
terrible idea.
no, listen. So my dad's a fucking meth head. So like, we went through the 12 steps for him, but like, I had to, because I was like old enough to like, my dad didn't drive, so I had to drive him, and I would sit in with all the NA things, and having to tell people like, hey man, like, I'm here because like my dad's the meth head and I'm not. You wouldn't believe how many times people would be like, nah, we get it. Like, you do drugs with your dad. And I'm like, no, I fucking don't. Like, shut up. Fuck. No, I don't.
uh,
I'm not, I don't have a learning disability. Like, I'm fucking not stupid. I know
uh,
exactly, like, no, right? I don't do drugs, period. I don't fucking smoke meth. Like, yeah, I'll smoke weed every now and then. Like, that's the gateway. No, it's not. It's absolutely not.
No,
Right?
no.
It's not.
no, it's the meth. The meth is the gateway to doing meth. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
minute you do meth, that's when you're doing meth. Like that's
Yeah, it's fucking.
the
Anyways, but I had to sit through like and do a full 12 step program, like, with him, and like, after a while you get tired of fucking like arguing with people about that shit, so you just kind of accept it.
yeah.
And let me tell you, the real cult shit is like that. Like that's
NA is a cult.
Yeah.
AA, I have nothing but good things to say. NA is a cult. I'm gonna go on record. NA is a cult. Anything that tells you can solve your problems with fucking coloring books, I'm sorry, that's a cult. Like,
like
you're doing cult shit right now, and you are living the delusion. It is honestly the behavior mechanisms behind justifying it are 100% the exact same things that cause you to do drugs, which is the exact same thing as the jealous husband when the wife is cheating, right? The
Yeah.
pathology is all in you. You can sugarcoat this shit however you want. You can console yourself with no, it really is their fault. Even if it really is their fault, you're the fucking pathological one.
yeah.
You're
It's
the
you
one who's
demon.
got to make the change.
Yeah.
That gets into like your kind of thing is like not fucking up, and you should be living your best life, right? My kind of thing is like
Mhm.
you should move your fucking body. Like
Oh no,
you need to
that's
move your
part of
body.
it.
Yeah.
That's literally part of it as well, right? Like the idea, like being a good homie means being good to yourself, right? Like it means that no one has to come and rescue you, right? Like that's the core of it. Really, is like it's. I hate to say it, it's like Mexican Jordan Peterson's, right? Like clean your room, but it's more like do some push-ups. You know what I'm
You
saying?
no.
Like,
Again, that's the part of Peterson that's right though.
yeah,
If we're gonna
that's
use good old pussy Hegel for a moment, the truth in Jordan Peterson is like no matter how much of a piece of shit he is, you're mad at him precisely because he told you to do the thing that's correct, which is clean your room. It's just you
Mhm.
also like you shouldn't clean your room to the detriment of like also not caring about the fact that your country's involved in yet another war.
Well, his whole thing is like clean the room. Also, chaotic female energy is why you can't get your dick sucked. Well,
Oh,
shut up, dude.
it's the
Right? Like,
vagina's fault. If it weren't
yeah,
for
no,
the
that's
terrifying vagina monster, you would have a clean room, and that's
yeah.
why you shouldn't care about geopolitics. It's because of vagina monsters and cleaning your room. And only half that's
I
right. You should clean your room. That's a
you
third.
should.
A third of
You
it's
take
right.
out well, you
Clean your
take the
room.
autonomy, the autonomy granted from like literally taking control of your own life
Yeah.
based on the things that you can. That's the other thing about like even NA is right on that one fucking level of like, change the things you can and grant yourself the serenity to not fucking to accept the things that you can't change. That's some
Yeah.
real fucking powerful shit, right? The
Yeah.
problem is it's couched in all this other bullshit where it's like, and also
Coloring
if you don't
book.
come, yeah. Well, my biggest beef with it was how they like listen. The reality of drug addicts and drug abuse is the best way to get out of drug abuse is literally to get older. The problem is if you do drugs, if you're constantly doing drugs, the chances are you're literally not going to get older.
You won't
But it's
live
a
long enough.
And
yeah,
also, like, it does stunt you some of those drugs will stunt your mental development to
yeah,
your age.
yeah.
Certainly,
I get
certainly
that
your
too.
emotional development.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
And
I
mean,
don't know.
like
I
that's
smoked lead all the time when I was a kid. I turned out fine.
well,
no,
you
I like
okay, you
You're on a
did.
podcast with us.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been that
Let's
fine.
let's not overblow and overuse that word fine until it loses all meaning. Okay.
but getting to like the idea of so what I mean by that is like the way that they classify drug addicts and drug abuse as or addiction in general as like a disease is bad. That's bad and wrong and stupid because disease implies that there's cures or implies that there's what I'm saying, like there's a methodology to cure that shit in yourself when it shouldn't be applied as a disease. It should be seen as a learning disability,
That's
right?
I do
You
want to
literally
just real quick. I want to point this out. That is a difference between a lot of rehabilitation in the 12-step program. 12-step programs say we do have to manage this behavior because you got to get your shit together,
Mhm.
right? But for the most part, they're like it's a disease, but you're not going to get over it. The way to control it is by stopping doing what you're doing. Ultimately, this is the way to give you the self control to stop doing what you're doing.
yeah, I
Like you got
like
to change your shit. You can't
in
just
California they have completely missed that step and they're just like, no, it's actually a disease, and there's like you can just drink this potion and it'll make you not fucking
Oh yeah, they have
I'm not
shots.
kidding. Yeah,
They have
yeah,
shots and shit for that stuff, but like those shots, like the recidivism rate on that
it's
is
high. It's insanely high.
oh my god, it's like almost like we're wasting resources manufacturing the drugs just to have people like rescind. Like
Yeah.
it literally to the point where it's an economic waste.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Like going back to what my
Yeah.
point was that like it's a learning disability, right? You literally cannot learn the lesson that like it's especially like with like fucking AA is another good one too. AA like people literally they're like man most of the people that I know that got off of fucking drinking usually didn't do it like didn't quit drinking until they were like in their late 30s. And the reason why it took them so long was because their body physically just couldn't maintain anymore, right? And they had this like they had this really fucking they had a choice between like do I continue fucking up my body like in a way that is immediate and I can feel it every time I drink, or do I just fucking stop? And like you don't want to tell alcoholics that hey, the best way to fucking do this is to be 35, right? Like that's not like, the best way to not be an alcoholic is to just be older than 35 because that's not the case. It's case by case for everyone. But I mean like that is
Yeah, my time in kitchens tells me there are plenty of 35-year-olds that do not have a problem with fucking up their bodies.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no. But I mean like what I'm getting at like long term, right? Is just like the other thing too, and this is some real shit that no one wants to address, is that like the reason why people like the people past 35, motherfuckers that are 50. I had an uncle named Shorty that was a heroin addict, and this motherfucker was 78 and he died from a hot shot that he scored on the street from heroin. He was a 78-year-old heroin addict.
Jeez.
He had started doing it when he was 13. This motherfucker was never clean, didn't have a sober day in his life, but kept it. He's literally his physiology was just built different, right? Like it was just he was able to synthesize heroin into protein or something. I have fucking no idea, but his like he just continued doing it, and the reason why he continued doing it was because he was the youngest son of two of his father was in prison, his mom was dead at a young age, and he was pretty much homeless his whole life, right? Like fucking he had nothing going on for him. You know what I'm saying? Like his entire life, he never had a reason to get clean. He never had anything to look forward to. The pain that he would put himself in like on a daily basis became normalized because he had nothing to fucking like, really nothing. And like that's a failure of society. It's not a failure of the man. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not and like that's what like that's the issue that I have with like fucking like any kind of fucking I guess like AA or NA cult is that they say this is your issue. They put the onus on you. And that is, you know what? Some of that onus does belong on you, like does belong to you. But if you don't got shit, like if your whole thing is as soon as you get out of rehab, you're homeless again, fucking what? You know what I'm saying? Like what did you get clean for? Like legitimately, right? It's just, like society asked you to get clean, but for what? There's no ultimate reward. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Well, again, like we're back to that problem is that you can clean your room all you want, and that's a good thing to do. But ultimately, like at some point, like if society's shit, you still need to change it.
Yeah.
You can't
It,
clean your room at the detriment of fucking your social obligations. You still have to have those, but like, in those situations, like there is onus. Like that's a part people don't want to face, which is why they rush to pathologize it or
mhm,
just put it off entirely as a social context. Because like, my old man's a cokehead and a drunk, right?
mhm,
It is what it is. I learned that shit from somewhere,
mhm,
and
mhm,
like ultimately, like when I was drinking it piss poorly, like who's putting the drinks in my mouth? Who's taking
mhm,
that final act, right?
mhm.
But like, what are the social conditions that lead me to doing that? Well, they were nothing good. See,
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's
I do get. Yeah.
simultaneous. Yeah, it's simultaneously true that you're right. I'm the one who's shoveling the shit into my mouth. I'm the one who's responsible for that part of the act. But, if I wasn't fucking depressed all the time and trying to like avoid suicide, if I wasn't just trying to pass time intoxicated so I had less time to deal with who I was, then maybe I wouldn't be doing the thing I'm doing. So like there's an element that goes beyond the self. And like
Yeah,
they can
I've
only
actually.
just real quick, they can only
Oh,
help you with the part that involves the self, obviously, because like, what are you gonna do then? You gonna call for revolution? Is that like AA's place in society?
Nah,
No.
but like a homie, like the homies would fucking see that part of society and make sure that you had a place to stay. Where you know what I'm saying, would try and line you up with a job, try and fucking really put your shit together, right? Like we have homies all the time. Like this isn't even really a fucking institution or anything, but I have friends that I know are finally sick and tired of doing the goddamn thing. I have an extra spare bedroom. That's some luck on my end. I let him convalesce here. I let him spend some time here. I work with him because I work from home. I send out fucking, mail and shit for them. I try to figure out how to get their shit together. And that's a personal thing that I do because I know that on the flip side, like, there is no help for them. And so, like, the onus is, for me at least, the onus has been placed on my shoulders that I'm in a position where I can actually do something for someone else. I'm
Right.
going to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think not enough people take that responsibility on because in their minds, they're like, well, I got here because of hard work and determination. When, like, that might be true, but if you have, like, the capability of taking care of someone else, do it. Don't not only just do it, but, like, do it, like, irregardless of whoever the fuck is asking for your help. You know
Listen,
what I'm
I'm
saying?
down. Kill the lawyers. Get rid of liability. All right, that's all I'm saying. Like, that's
It's not very Semitic of you to say kill lawyers, man.
Got your ass.
Well, it's not Semitic. I made a joke. Legally,
Uh-huh.
that was a joke. That's where I fucked up. But yeah, no, it's that's kind of the
Yeah.
I don't know. It's brutal shit.
Yeah, it's ugly. It's like that's why, like, listen, the reality of the real reason why the fucking Darkos epistemological methodology of not giving a single shit about whatever the fuck, however you came to your conclusions is that two things can be true at once, right? Whereas a lot of people, like, you would not believe the baby brain that I deal with on a daily basis, that people can't factor that two separate things that aren't really intertwined can also be true, right? Like, it's crazy to me. It blows my mind.
Yeah, one of these days I'll have to tell you about my day job. So I understand. I understand very well. But yeah, I don't know what we're running here. Oh, I'd like to refute your point now, John. I'd
Oh
like to refute
yes.
your point. The
Mhm.
problem is the inherent arrogance of presuming that all humor is anti-Semitic is a
Mhm.
liberal invention to ascribe to the Jew an undue sense of pride and arrogance. One would think that the Jew is then an eternal figure that has always been hated and was destined to be hated because of its Jewish character and quality.
Well,
Let's be real. Long before there was a Jew, we had
Mhm.
everything from the homeless to the disabled to the other. Long before the Jew ever reared its Jewishness. So the idea that the anti-Semite begets the Jew to hate, this is ridiculous. The notion of hate precludes all of this. And clearly,
so
all humor is
Mhm.
ableist,
you
ageist.
know,
All humor is sexist. All humor is misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic. It is all of these things that predate the existence of the Jew. That is what is lost in all of this. The
well, I
idea
would.
that so many philosophers have, Sartre
Mhm.
famously, the anti-Semite hates so fervently that he would invent the Jew. He had no need to invent the Jew. The Jew was just a fortunate thing to be able to hand to them, like a little Christmas treat to the bigot. The bigot had many gripes well before then. The poor
So what you're
were a
telling me is
classic
that
one.
that the disabled are the real Jews. That's
Well,
that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting out of this. Listen,
there
I wasn't paying
again.
attention at all, but that's what I'm getting out of this.
One could be so reductive as to say so. However, I would disagree. Cursory misunderstanding of my terminology.
Well, I think that the person, with the pit crew avatar and the fucking all of the very annoying things that make up J Twitter, what they would say back is that the difference between anti-Semitism and most other forms of bigotry is that anti-Semitism acts as an obsession, whereas other forms of bigotry tend to be like trite observations. And that this is the
You
quote.
know what I would respond to that with? Tell that
What?
to a black person, to their face, that anti-black racism was nothing more than a casual observance. Tell that to them.
And what they would say just to finish the point, is that absent the Jew, the anti-Semite would invent them.
I already covered
That's
that though. The problem is that's a circular argument because they already had plenty of other people to hate before then, in which they happily or unhappily did, depending on how you view their pathology. Is it something pleasing? Is it a pleasing obsession or is it a non-pleasing obsession? If it's a pleasing
well, I
obsession,
mean,
they were happy to do it. If it was an unpleasing obsession, a displeasantness, a permanent
look,
displeasant fixture, then no, they were not very happy to do it, but they certainly did what they had to do to get by.
see, the thing that's funny about this is that the best point that they could then make from that point would be something along the lines of, well, look at Modi. There aren't really any Jews in India, but he's essentially he's fused Jews and black people in his hate of Muslims. Of course,
Which
I
which
don't think
again is arrogant. He can't just hate Muslims. He can't just hate that. The arrogant pathology of the person making these arguments is essentially that I have to be the obsession of all hate, which is a different kind of narcissism than I have to be the obsession of all love, because I have to be the perfect victim instead of the perfectly adored. Which
well, the thing that I was going to say, just to end that point, was that it's ironic that they don't make that point because, of course, they love Modi, but
yeah.
that's another subject.
Well, that's another problem, isn't it? They would have to admit that there's flaws in their sacred fucking neoliberal fascist cow.
Yeah, I bet that ideology smell crazy in there.
Oh yeah, that ideology is cooking real well with those motherfuckers. Going
No,
real healthy brained.
I think I had this conversation on like one of my what is it called? On one I have a Patreon now and we have fucking paid episodes now, but I had a conversation kind of regarding this where I said that the best like for me the funniest shit to me is absurdism, right? Like I just something that's completely absurd is always the thing that gets a chuckle out of me, and it's always where my brain goes to first when someone tells me something. Just the absurdity of it is what like really catches me, which is why I find a lot of like racist shit funny, right?
Racist shit is a riot.
It's yeah, because the absurdity of racism is that there's an entire subsection of humans that are mad at other humans for being born closer to the equator. That's like the that's literally that's it. And then like all the cultural shit beyond that is just like added texture, right? It's just like, like, and it gets even
Yeah.
funnier when you have like what is it, balkanization, when you have like Turks mad at Greek people when they're essentially the same, and you say that they get fucking really mad about
Yeah,
that.
Oh yeah, they do.
Right? Like so, like, but that's what the joke is, that like, it's funny to me that the absurdity of that you can be upset with someone that like could even literally look like you, but it's just a touch paler or a touch darker, or like wears a different funny hat, right? Like
Yeah.
that shit is hilarious and should be laughed at, right? And like to the people who don't enjoy that kind of the people who can't see that kind of absurdity, there's like two kinds of people, and that's either one, they're not very funny and so they should be pitied, so you should like try and really explain the joke to them. The other flip side of that is that they are literally making a dollar off of like telling you what is and is not funny, right?
Yeah.
They have a vested literal interest in that.
Yeah, they have to ruin humor.
Yeah, because they get paid. They get more Netflix like hate watches by saying
Yeah.
that this is funny or is not funny. You know what I'm saying? Like even like one of the things that I got people got mad at me for, like fucking some random people got mad at me for it, was my whole criticism of the Dave Chappelle shit was that it just wasn't funny.
Right.
Like
no,
literally
it
I
hasn't
was
been in a long time.
It is.
yeah, and I'm like fucking mad about that. I'm like, yeah, I was just waiting for a joke, and my friend's like, oh, you just blah, blah. I'm like, listen, if you would have told me a solid like fucking I don't know, if he would have said like a joke about like dead naming P Diddy or something like that, that would have been fucking hilarious. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, depending on how you write that, sure, that would be a blast. You also have to
Yeah.
write a funny joke. Like you can just write a joke that sucks too. The problem is like, we all know the sin of calamity, which is why I go off periodically just about like I wish Steve Hofstetter like would. Did I ever tell you my Steve Hofstetter jokes? I don't know if you know who that guy is.
Nah, that's white people lore I don't know about.
Oh, okay. So hey, Jewish lore.
Okay, well, my bad.
All right, so I'm gonna tell you my one of my favorite anti-Steve Hofstetter jokes, right?
Mhm.
So Steve is walking down the street and somebody recognizes him. Okay, and the guy says, "Hey, Steve, I haven't seen you since last Thursday. How you been?" And he goes, "Who the fuck are you? I'm Steve Hofstetter."
Mhm.
Okay. And the guy
Mhm.
says, come on, man, stop fucking around. I haven't seen you. Are you doing okay? I know how rough that was. I wanted to know if you're all right." And he's
Mhm.
like, "Excuse me, sir. I'm Steve fucking Hofstetter. You're going to have to fucking check yourself and your privilege." And the
Mhm.
guy says, "Come on, man. Last Thursday you walked in. I was fucking your wife at your house." And
Mhm.
Steve rolls his eyes. He says, "Do you know how many men that describes?
Mhm.
Why would I know you out of the whole group?" Everybody
Solid,
who is
solid
fucking
joke.
yeah. This guy's self-important. He's a clap median, right? So what is Dave Chappelle doing? He's just doing the logical antithesis of that, which is a hate median, which is you're
Mhm.
watching him specifically so you can hate him,
Yeah.
right? Because like let's face it, Dave Chappelle, who was once like probably unquestionably the funniest motherfucker, he's just not funny anymore because he's old. He's old and he's out
Well,
of touch, and he's kind of like he's figured that out. So what's he doing? Well, if all these other assholes are getting claps for stupid shit, all you gotta do is say dumb shit and be hated. Like
people disagree with me on this one, but I don't think he was the funniest of all time. I
there
think
was a
that
period. There was a period where he
no,
was a funny
it's
motherfucker.
always been Cat Williams and still
Okay,
continues to be Cat Williams.
okay,
Cat,
yes, but I didn't
Cat
say
Williams.
goat. I just said the funniest motherfucker.
Yeah. No,
Chappelle was
I'll
bigger first
concede.
in the public
I'll
consciousness.
concede. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
concede. Cat
Do
Williams
you
is
know black
legitimately.
people is a phenomenal skit.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Yes.
Cat Williams couldn't have his own sketch show, period.
The
Right? Like
fucking no.
he's too funny. He's
Yeah.
literally too funny. He's so funny he can't stop getting arrested.
Right.
That is a level of funny that I'll never
for
achieve. Right?
for shit you wouldn't think a guy that small would be able to do, like fighting people.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
he can't get like Glenn Danzig, like that little stocky beefy motherfucker. He got his ass whooped the first time he tried fighting, and that was one of his own bouncers. He got pissed off at, and the bouncer was like, "Hell no, you can't even pay me not to beat your ass." Cat Williams, he just rolls up in a club and gets in a fucking fight. That's a great bit.
He got
Like
in a fight. He got in a fight with a literal teenager and
yes,
lost on Twitter.
yes,
That is literally the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. That
that's
is it's and then he went and talked about it on a fucking stand up like
I
on a
won.
live taping of a show like a month later. Like that's
Yeah.
insane. That's yeah.
Dude, I've watched the best Kaufman bit, which is when he has those three grown black men pretend to be his adopted sons on Dave Letterman, which is amazing. It's an amazing bit. All right, if you haven't seen it, you have to fucking put that into your YouTube feed and watch that shit. Literally
That
amazing.
sounds hilarious.
And
But
and that and somehow Cat Williams figured out how to out Kaufman. Like
yeah, Cat Williams high key is like people don't put enough respect on that man.
no.
He's a giant in comedy. He's a 5'2" in real life, but a giant in comedy.
Yes, that motherfucker is fucking hilarious. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Just so.
It kills me
So
that Dave Chappelle gets that goat crown from every fucking bitch ass nerd that I meet that like doesn't like that's the thing. Comedy is the worst thing to be nerdy about. Right?
yes.
Comedy is a bad thing to be like when you know a lot about comedy, you actually end up not being funny.
Yeah,
And I
way to
know
ruin it for everybody, asshole.
and so like I do my best to not give a single shit about like comedians, but I recognize greatness when I see greatness, right?
I, it,
And like
like
the
I,
two greatest like comedians of all time happen to be Bernie Mac, like rest in peace. The reason why Bernie Mac is funny was because like he really doesn't get the crown because he had a lot of work, but he kind of like he passed away a little too soon.
yeah,
Whereas like Cat Williams is consistently not only is he funny like on stage, his actual real life is funny. You know what I mean? Like his exploits, the things that he does are hilarious.
yeah.
That's a level of comedy that most people will never achieve.
No, like I
Right.
said, he out Kaufman. I don't know. Like, who's gonna think of that bit? Just losing to a fucking kid on Twitter entirely so you can do a stand-up set about it.
It's amazing.
Like,
Impressive.
how do you even manage to throw that fight? Like, you actually have to try to throw that fight.
No, that kid. That was a. I will concede that was a big kid that he picked up. Right. My man's is very small. Like,
he's he's a tiny boy. He's bite sized.
yeah,
Yeah.
he
Okay.
wasn't going into that to win. Like, and I think like
No, but he
the
still picked that fight entirely to lose it, so he can make jokes about it later.
yeah. Not only
Like,
that, but he like fucking he. The one of the funniest things about that is that like so the mother pressed charges
yeah.
and then the PA or not the DA of the area literally didn't press charges, like canceled those charges that she pressed because they said that was embarrassing. Like that, the punishment was how embarrassing it was. At
to get his fucking ass beat by a child.
yeah, yeah, that was enough of a fucking punishment. And like they like, I think that there was like he tried to press charges on the kid, which also got blocked. But that would have been in a perfect world, they would have succeeded. That kid would have caught some time. But
No, in a fucking perfect world, he would have had to go to trial and explain why he started a fight with a child. Like there would be forever in human history, right, or at least the history of the United
Yeah.
States, the trial of
Cat
some
Williams.
teenager versus
Yeah.
Cat Williams. What would that be? The state of California?
I think it was somewhere in like fucking.
It was the South. I'm
What-
pretty sure it was the
Tell
South.
me it was Georgia. Tell me it was Georgia. Oh
It
my
might have been
god.
Georgia.
That's
That
so
would've been
badass.
hilarious.
Oh, that's right. He is in Georgia, isn't he? That's where he's based out of.
Yeah, Atlanta.
Yeah. Oh fuck. Oh my god. Just
Also, like-
explaining to the judge how he couldn't beat a child.
Also, like,
And
it's
that's why the
extremely funny-
child should go to jail.
It's extremely funny to me. I went to a Cat Williams show in Oakland one time, and it was fucking. So I went to a Cat Williams show once, and I like my brother went to a Dave Chappelle show,
Yeah.
and the difference between how
Oh, you had way more fun.
Oh yeah, you
no,
did.
yes, way fucking more fun. But on top of that, right, like the Dave Chappelle show, when you went in there, he asked everyone to take their phones and like put them in a bag, and then you got them at the end of the thing, and there was like ushers to keep people quiet so they weren't laughing too hard. Like it was a fucking bizarre experience. My brother was like, "Yeah, it was weird." Like,
Wow, it's the Panopticon, but for
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah.
yeah. Like, you know, like, and like he wasn't taking questions, and it said like that at the end. Whereas like I went to Oakland, he was smoking weed outside in the front parking lot with people talking, like waiting in line to go see him while fucking
Yeah.
buying tickets. He goes in there. He tells people, pull out your phones. I want y'all to see this, and just starts like just screaming, like just. And you know what, like that was a wild crowd. Like people in there were just acting a fool, and it was insane. But the energy there, he was like directing it, right?
Yeah.
That shit is way more fucking impressive to me. The fact that like that is a fucking like he just got into front of a sea of people, like just people acting a fool, and commanded them, right? Like that is a far more impressive feat than Dave Chappelle asking everyone, "Hey, you guys got to be quiet while I tell my jokes. Fuck out of here, man."
Yeah. I want you to
Like,
laugh
that's-
enough so people know I'm funny.
Yeah, crazy, literally crazy. I think someone passed out from laughing at one point, and like someone had to be removed from the thing because they were laughing that hard, which is fucking beyond impressive. Like,
Yeah. No, Cat Williams fucking rocks.
yeah, incredible.
That shit
fucking
is
performance.
gold. That shit is gold. All right, so we're cruising in on midnight. We've done long enough. We definitely fulfilled our social obligation.
Ooh.
You know, next time, make sure to join the chat. That way, it's praxis, and then we can seize the means through voting for, I don't know, Comrade Chuck Schumer. This has been the Vouch live stream. I've you know, if you're keeping track at home, I was allowed to say the N-word 6 times, and I only said it 5, so really I'm owed a couple extra N-words for good behavior.
Topic next week is age of consent.
The topic next week is going to be age of consent, which I'm going to make some comments that are actually anti-child porn, but I'm going to make it really seem like in context I really love child porn, and then I'm going to pretend I didn't do it, which is the wrong way to handle that. So I'm going to
And really
definitely do that.
aggressively attack people who suggest that you could be you know.
I'd like
Also,
to.
make sure to like and subscribe. Follow my Patreon. Highest tier, $1,000.
Yeah, make sure to do that because I need more beard gel and
Yeah.
I need more hair ties for my ponytail and I need thicker Coke bottle lenses. Which
On some
I'm
on
what? How old is Vouch? What is he, like 14? What is he, 78? Like I don't.
I actually think he's like in his 30s, but I
I
could
would
be wrong.
I would guess honestly like Vouch's demeanor and his usage of language, like I would guess he's my brother's age. Like
Yeah,
no
I think it's
bullshit.
actually pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was born in like 1990. If
Oh
I had to
yeah,
guess.
that's my age. So yeah,
Yeah.
1990.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think he's the same. Yeah, he's got that energy, that 90s urge to what is it? To like talk about pedophiles in a simping kind of way. It's a 90s trait. Every 90s kid remembers that. Every 90s baby remembers.
I instantly regret everything I've said.
It's a joke. It's a bit.
Yeah, we're doing a bit here.
Yeah,
We
this is
finally
the bit.
decided. Last 3
No.
minutes, we're doing some bits here. I decided to do my Vouch bit.
Could I get a plug? Can I plug my little
You
pod?
you can plug everything but your ass because we'll get banned for sexual content.
Well, okay. If you liked a lot of the bullshit that I said, you can always follow me on Twitter at Aintershow, where I'm extremely sincere and insane. You can listen to my podcast, The Ain't Shit Show Official. It's all over everywhere. You just got to Google it. Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, you can listen to us. You can also go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/the homie collective, and let the homie hold $1. And yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. All right, and this has, of course, been the Sons of Trier live stream. Thank you to our guest here, the host of Aintershow, Ain't Shit Show.
Yep.
At Aintershow. Again, you should follow because it's a fun time. He follows back.
Yep,
Your
I
ass
do.
is beautiful.
Now I follow back if you've got bits, but if you got things like America First, I'm gonna follow you back, and then I'm gonna make fun of your ass.
Yeah, definitely. Then sign up. I like a good fight on Twitter. Yeah. So, all right, and be well. Don't die. See you next.